Hello, everyone. Hi. This is going to be a bit of a different video. I've never really done one of these before, but I felt like doing a collection video, and I have quite the sizable collection, so here I am to show it off. That's a fucking terrible intro. I have collection of Doctor Who thing, me show off thing to you, and you go, wow. I don't know how else to begin this other than please look at my collection. As you can see, I've got quite a bit of the classic series across this whole desk here. So the main thing for this video is just going to be going through each episode or series or season or whatever, hopefully giving my quick thoughts on it, and then moving on to the next. Obviously, I've never done a video like this before, so I've got a feeling my voice is going to be killing by the end of it. Also, the lighting might change just because I'm right next to the window, so hopefully that's not big of an issue. Some of the more eagle-eyed viewers of you may have noticed a few oddities here and there. First of all, where's all the cardboard? Well, may I direct you to my patent-pended cardboard shelf. This shelf right here is where I keep all of the cardboard. I am one of those people, when I pick up a case with a piece of media in it, I want to get to the media as quick as possible. So I put all the slip cases and the sleeves and the boxes here. I fold them up as delicately as I can. I stick them on this shelf. So for the animated reconstructions, for the collection sets, they don't have them. I only make the exception with Series 5 onwards, because removing the sleeve actively gives you worse artwork and a flimsier case in general, especially with the Whittaker ones where it's that sort of flimsy-ish cardboard. So those are the only exceptions. So if you're wondering where the cardboard is, it's on that shelf there. You will also notice that some of the DVDs have the purple logo on them and the PG logo on them, and the animated reconstructions have the full artwork. Yes, I am aware they have reversible covers to make them more in line with the typical ones with the BBC logo and the To Entertain. I am aware of that. I don't mind. I think it makes the collection look more fun, and I like having uncropped artwork. I like looking at this and seeing all of this rather than a cropped version of it. That's just the kind of person I am. Embrace chaos. So without any further ado, and hopefully in the best possible time frame I have, I'm gonna go through each story. Please be aware, obviously, everything I'm about to say about each story and season, that's my opinion. We can have a nice, civil discussion about it in the comments. Please try to keep that in mind. Kicking things off with obviously the Hartnell era and the beginning of the show, we have the very first episode of Doctor Who, The Daleks, written by Terry Nation. Okay, listen to me. This isn't actually the first episode of Doctor Who. I have a secret DVD in my collection, but you can't tell anyone about it. Ooh, it's an unearthly child, or the tribe of gum to some people. For those of you who don't know about this whole drama debacle, basically, thanks to the 60th anniversary, every episode of the classic series is now available on BBC iPlayer. Except for one. The most important one. The first one. An Unearthly Child was written in 1963 by a man called Anthony Coburn. And Anthony Coburn is, sadly no longer with us. However, his son, whose name escapes me right now, obviously because he is a descendant of Anthony Coburn, has the licensing agreements. So what happens with distribution and streaming and all that jazz. Now, the problem with Anthony Coburn's son, whose name escapes me, is that he is, oh gosh, God, how do I put this delicately? A transphobic racist troglodyte who's angry at the BBC for making the Doctor a black man. So, throwing a petty little temper tantrum, he is refusing to give the license for An Unearthly Child to the BBC, meaning that currently the only way to watch the very first episode of Doctor Who is to own it physically on DVD. I walked into an Asda last week and there was a sealed box set of the beginning box set. In the year 2024, that is a surreal experience. Oh, yeah, anyway, An Unearthly Child is a story. It's good. Part 1 is definitely the standout here. I don't think anyone would disagree with you, but to be honest, I quite like the cavemen drama. It's really not as boring as I thought it was on a first viewing, all things considered. I like that the cavemen aren't frankly just stupid and speaking in broken English. They're like fully... oh god, what's the word? They speak in full sentences and they are speaking full English, but like their understanding of things like morality and manners are just completely foreign to them, and I love that as a concept. They do the same thing in Only Human, which is a novel by Gareth Roberts, which does the same thing, where like you have cavemen that speak full sentences, full normal English, but like it's just their understanding of things that's off. And I think that's one of like the best things you can do with cavemen in stories. And all things considered, I think An Unearthly Child is a good start to the show. Additionally, if anyone is ever upset at the whole trope of character gets captured, escapes, and then gets captured again, just remember that it all started way back with An Unearthly Child. Okay, now we can talk about the Daleks. The Daleks is... it's the Daleks. Pretty much everything that could be said about the Daleks has been said before. It's iconic, it's eerie, it's atmospheric. It really loses it in the last 3 episodes. One of them is basically just dedicated to jumping over a hole, and that's it. I have seen the colour version, but I'm not in a hurry to get it on DVD, purely because it's still on iPlayer at the minute, and because it wasn't that great. Amazing technical achievement, less great editing. By all means, edit down like a 3-hour story into a shorter story, but not that short. The edge of destruction. So for those who don't know, season 1, when they were in the production stage of Doctor Who, the BBC basically said, alright, you've got X amount of episodes and you need to distribute them as you see fit. The Daleks was originally meant to be 9 parts, I believe, but then they had to shorten the story to make it more concise. So basically, season 1 has 2 extra episodes just lying around, no cast available, no actors available, no sets available. All the production team had was the main cast and the TARDIS interior. So David Whittaker, in a panicked fit, just made something, and that's the Edge of Destruction. It's an interesting bottle episode, I'll give it that. Episode 1 is definitely a lot better than episode 2, just from a directing standpoint, but like, I like it for how weird it is, and I like that it sort of addresses the drama of this TARDIS team, where for the last 2 stories, Ian and Barbara have been, for lack of a better word, miserable because of the situation they've been put in. And I like that this story sort of resolves the drama with the whole TARDIS quartet. I feel like if they didn't address it, it would have been a big, overhanging issue for the whole Hartnell era. And I'm glad that this story, at least a little bit, addresses it and resolves it. The Keys of Marinus. The Keys of Marinus is a story that I've watched a grand total of once, and I don't really have any strong opinions towards it. I don't hate it, but I don't love it. I just remember weird side bits in it, like the key place, the trial scene, the brains in the jars, the fact that the Vords suck. I've heard good things about the Domain of the Vord, I think it's called. Apparently that's a good origin story, but like, I'm just not that interested in the Vord, to be honest. Maybe I need to give it a rewatch to give it a second chance, but I didn't really have any strong opinions towards it. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. I don't know, it's fine. The Aztecs. This, to me, is one of the quintessential Hartnell stories for me. It's just so good. Namely because it's short. This story just breezes by with a great premise, in a great setting, with a great side cast. It's just phenomenal. What I love about the Aztecs is that it's not just riding off, let's throw TARDIS team into X historical setting. There's an actual, emotional core to the story. That being that Barbara wants to save the Aztecs and wants to change history. I feel like more historicals need to do that, both in on screen and in Big Finish. There needs to be a character-driven thing from the main cast right in the center of the story. It can't just be, let's throw the TARDIS team into this historical setting and they have to survive or get back to the TARDIS. There needs to be some sort of a hook at the core of the story, and thankfully the Aztecs has it. Oh, the Sensorites. It's the Sensorites. I don't know what to say. Good opening episode. Very bad rest of episode. I don't know what else to say. It's got literally every single trope that I hate in Doctor Who in one story. I will admit, I'm glad that this story, early on in Doctor Who's history, establishes not every alien is evil. But at the same time, you have what's-his-name, the main villain of the story, the Sensorite, who is, for lack of a better word, the most infuriatingly evil villain I've ever seen, whose plan basically amounts to, I don't want the humans coming to the Sense Sphere because I don't trust them, even though they've done absolutely nothing to betray us in any conceivable way. And he doesn't even get, reprimanded for it. He gets reprimanded off screen, but, we don't see it. That's cool. The Doctor's landed us in the middle of the French Revolution. The Reign of Terror. I'm a simple man. I like it when they force the title of a story into a story. I can't help it. The more forced it sounds, the better. Reign of Terror, it's alright. Again, I've only watched it once. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. The animated reconstruction was admittedly a bit off, and those of you who have seen it will know what I mean. But otherwise, I quite enjoyed it, to be honest. That might change on a rewatch, but colour me impressed. Doctor Who in the French Revolution is surprisingly decent. Planet of Giants. Me and Planet of Giants have a bit of a history, because I actually experienced this story first on Twitch, of all places. I think it was around the 50th anniversary of the show. Oh no, it might have been around Series 11. Twitch did this partnership with the BBC where they just transmitted a load of episodes from the classic series live on Twitch. And the only episodes that I remember watching when I was in about secondary school were the entirety of Planet of Giants, I think the ending of the Dalek invasion of Earth, the entirety of the Rescue, and then all of the Chase. I just remember staying up until daft o'clock watching them all. And I didn't do that for any other era, it was just for the Hartnell era. This was some of my first exposure to Hartnell, and I loved it because I was just enamored with it. And I'm equally enamored with Planet of Giants. I've got a nostalgic connection towards it, and it's just such a fun gimmick. More stories need to kind of have a gimmick that's just, the TARDIS gets shrunk. Now we need to deal with ants. The Dalek invasion of Earth. I took a while to warm to this story. For a long time, I just watched the Peter Cushing film, and I watched this, and I thought, this is dead boring. The Daleks are barely in it. The pacing is off. I don't like the Dalek invasion of Earth. And then I watched it, recently, and something just clicked. Having the Daleks barely be in it as this sort of dark, looming presence actually makes them more menacing. I don't really know how else to explain it. I've just really come around on the Dalek invasion of Earth. And side note, one of the major criticisms I see heralded at the Dalek invasion of Earth is that, the Daleks' plan doesn't make any sense. They want to drill to the core of the planet and replace it with an engine so that they can pilot around the planet like a giant battleship. That's so stupid. That doesn't make any sense. First of all, it's Doctor Who, and second of all, that's a cool plan. I don't care if it doesn't make any sense. I fully believe the Daleks have just an engine they can plug into a planet, and just the visual of a planet becoming a giant battleship, that's cool. I want more cool, batshit insane plans from the Daleks. The Rescue. The Rescue is just solid. I don't really know what else to say about it. It's a nice, quick two-parter that introduces a great companion. It's a neat mystery. It's just solid. I don't really know what else to say. The Romans. The Romans is a story I've only watched once, and I've been meaning to get round to watching it again. I just haven't had the time. But, I remember loving this story. Rather than going with, the dark, sort of gritty, historical setting, they instead make it a bit of a comedic romp. And I quite like that. As you're probably going to find out through the rest of this collection video, I am very much a big fan of fun, camp, silly, goofy Doctor Who. And the Romans just hits all the right notes for me, to be honest. The Web Planet. Yeah, the Space Museum. Yeah, here we go. The Chase. I adore The Chase. The Chase is the kind of story that can't exist anywhere else in Doctor Who. In no other era, and in no other season. You could only do The Chase in Season 2, and I love that. I adore this story so much. It's just a great big race across time and space with the Daleks, used in a funny way. It's literally everything I want in Doctor Who, and it's got the Daleks in it. I just love it. I remember being glued to my screen at daft o'clock in the morning in secondary school, just watching all of The Chase, because I couldn't leave it alone. We've got Daleks on a pirate ship. We've got Daleks fighting Dracula and Frankenstein and mechanoids, and it's just fun. I love how fun it is. The Time Meddler, featuring the debut of nobody's favourite Time Lord, the Monk. I've got my own grievances with the Monk, to be honest, just from a concept and from how Big Finish like to use them, but I'll admit they do kind of work in this story. It's a very slow burn, which doesn't help. The whole cliffhanger of, the Monk's got a TARDIS. That either needs to be a part 1 reveal or a part 2 reveal. Not a part 3 cliffhanger. Other than that, I do quite like the setting, to be honest. I do like the Monk's plan. It's fine. I probably need to give it a rewatch, but, it was fine. Galaxy 4, the first major animated reconstruction we've got here. Okay, from a story perspective, it's fine. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. It's a very simple, very, very simple story of don't judge by appearances. Plot twist, the beautiful women are the villains and the giant ugly fish people are the good guys. That's fine. And the story's got the Chumblies in it. I have to give points, it's got the Chumblies in it. Everybody loves the Chumblies. Everybody loves the Chumblies. From an animation perspective, I will admit, it's better than Abominable Snowmen and Fury from the Deep. From that team, this is probably their best. But at the same time, look, I am a quote-unquote animator. Obviously, on my channel, you've seen my animations. I am studying animation at uni. I want to be an animator. So I take the animated reconstructions quite seriously. I look at them a bit differently. And when it comes to Galaxy 4, it's just a little bit off. The backgrounds are nice, the colours are nice, but it's really with the character animation that just doesn't work for me. Hartnell doesn't look like Hartnell in this. It's really in the face that it's off. Vicky looks weirdly older than she should be in this story, and something about Steven's face looks like it's just been punched in, and I can't really describe it any other way. The movement, like the walk cycles and just hand movements and all that, it all feels off, and that's a consistent issue with Abominable and especially with Fury. We are going to get to Fury from the Deep, don't you worry. But I will admit, in Galaxy 4, it's probably the best one they've done. It's just, for me, it's a bit off. The arc. Technically, no, screw the technically thing. Good idea in concept. I like that it's a 4-parter that splits it down the middle with 2 parts in the past, 2 parts in the future, and during that time there's been like an alien uprising. I like that. The problem is that the first 2 episodes are infinitely more interesting than the last 2 episodes. Namely because of the monoids. Interesting design, less so interesting voice, and just general utilization of them as a villain. There is, of course, that infamous scene where a monoid is with the Doctor and Dodo, and is sort of going, haha, I sure hope those humans are in for a surprise. And Dodo just looks at him and is like, are you planning something? And he just goes, no. Like, admittedly, that is a funny moment, but, like, it's not a very good showcase for your villain. Do I put on the Western accent? Do I put on a cowboy accent for this thing? It's gonna be really bad if it sounds bad. Do I have the right? Well, gee whiz, partner, the Gunfighters sure is a weird fucking episode. It's got a musical number, and it ain't historically accurate, but it sure as shit is fun, I tell you what. At like daft o'clock in the morning in secondary school, just watching all of the chase, because I couldn't leave it alone. We've got Daleks on a pirate ship. We've got Daleks fighting Dracula and Frankenstein and mechanoids, and it's just fun. I love how fun it is. The Time Meddler, featuring the debut of nobody's favourite Time Lord, the Monk. I've got my own grievances with the Monk, to be honest, just from a concept and from how Big Finish like to use them, but I'll admit they do kind of work in this story. It's a very slow burn, which doesn't help, like the whole cliffhanger of, the Monk's got a TARDIS. That either needs to be a part 1 reveal or a part 2 reveal, not a part 3 cliffhanger. Other than that, I do quite like the setting, to be honest. I do like the Monk's plan. It's fine. I probably need to give it a rewatch, but yeah, it was fine. Galaxy 4, the first major animated reconstruction we've got here. Okay, from a story perspective, it's fine. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. It's a very simple, very, very simple story of don't judge by appearances. Plot twist, the beautiful women are the villains and the giant ugly fish people are the good guys. That's fine. And the story's got the Chumblies in it. I have to give points, it's got the Chumblies in it. Everybody loves the Chumblies. Everybody loves the Chumblies. From an animation perspective, I will admit, it's better than Abominable Snowmen and Fury from the Deep. From that team, this is probably their best. But at the same time, look, I am a quote-unquote animator. Obviously, on my channel, you've seen my animations. I am studying animation at uni. I want to be an animator. So I take the animated reconstructions quite seriously. I look at them a bit differently. And when it comes to Galaxy 4, it's just a little bit off. The backgrounds are nice, the colours are nice, but it's really with the character animation that just doesn't work for me. Hartnell doesn't look like Hartnell in this. It's really in the face that it's off. Vicky looks weirdly older than she should be in this story, and something about Steven's face looks like it's just been punched in, and I can't really describe it any other way. The movement, like the walk cycles and just hand movements and all that, it all feels off, and that's a consistent issue with Abominable and especially with Fury. We are going to get to Fury from the Deep, don't you worry. But I will admit, in Galaxy 4, it's probably the best one they've done. It's just, for me, it's a bit off. The arc, technically... No, screw the technically thing. Good idea in concept. I like that it's a 4-parter that splits it down the middle with 2 parts in the past, 2 parts in the future, and during that time there's been like an alien uprising. I like that. The problem is that the first 2 episodes are infinitely more interesting than the last 2 episodes. Namely because of the monoids. Interesting design, less so interesting voice, and just general utilization of them as a villain. There is, of course, that infamous scene where a monoid is with the Doctor and Dodo, and is sort of going, haha, I sure hope those humans are in for a surprise. And Dodo just looks at him and is like, are you planning something? And he just goes, no. Like, admittedly, that is a funny moment, but, like, it's not a very good showcase for your villain. Do I put on the Western accent? Do I put on a cowboy accent for this thing? It's gonna be really bad if it sounds bad. Do I have the right? Well, gee whiz, partner, the Gunfighters sure is a weird fucking episode. It's got a musical number, and it ain't historically accurate, but it sure as shit is fun, I tell you what. Anyway, the War Machines. The War Machines is a bit of a weird one, where, like, it's very close to being good, but it's just a little bit off. It's a very ahead of its time idea, with, you know, like, the AI gone wrong thing, but because it's written in 1966, it's just a little bit off with everything. The pacing is off. The characters are a bit off. Bless it for trying, but everything just does feel a bit off. Dodo, of course, gets the best companion exit, because she doesn't get one. The 10th Planet, the final episode of William Hartnell, and the genesis of the Cybermen. Here's the thing. The 10th Planet on its own is not a great story to me. Like, it's very stop and start. The Cybermen are barely in it. Like, they're infamously not even in part 3. And they barely show up in part 1, so it's basically half the story they're there, half the story they're not. And the side cast aren't really that interesting. But when the Cybermen are on screen, and with Hartnell's regeneration in it, it kind of bumps it up. Like, it would be a 6 on its 10 without that, but because it's got the regeneration and these Cybermen in it, I can't give it anything lower than a 7. I think if I had to rank regeneration specials, I think the 10th Planet would be the lowest one. That's not me calling it the worst regeneration story, but I think because every other regeneration story is that much better and does more with the concept of regeneration, it's just by a technicality that the 10th Planet isn't really the best one. But, like, no disrespect, it's still good. The power of the Daleks. I don't really have anything else to add. It's one of the best series openers. It's one of the best post-regeneration episodes. It's just a really good Dalek story. I have no notes. The Underwater Menace. Now, this is a very love it or hate it story. Some people love the camp tone and the over-the-top villain. Some people think it is far too silly for words. Where am I in that camp? I'm in the camp of fucking loving this story. I am very much an Underwater Menace defender, and I will not apologise for that. I love stupid villains. I love stupid villain plans. It's fun. I love how the villain of this story has an army of fish people, and he wants to raise Atlantis so that he can blow up the world just 'cause he can. That's fun. That's stupidly fun. Doctor Who needs to be more like a cartoon. The Moon Base. It's basically just the 10th planet, but with an extra companion, a different Cyberman design, and we're on the moon this time. And who'd have thought it? That makes the story better. I'm sorry, I kind of just prefer it. The Macra Terror. This is, without a doubt, one of the most critically acclaimed animations, and I'm finding it hard to disagree. Evil beats it out just a bit more for me, because Evil of the Daleks does more with the animation. I think the Macra Terror has great animation, but the story itself doesn't let it flex it as much, whereas Evil of the Daleks has like action scenes and fight scenes and all these different sets, whereas the Macra Terror has to stick to the colony and that's about it. But like, it still looks phenomenal. The facial expressions, the movement, the lighting, the compositing, the macro design, oh my god. And it helps that this good animation is being used on a good story. A good, simple, short story. You know, as opposed to this piece of shit, The Faceless Ones has fantastic animation and nothing to use it on. The Faceless Ones is a boring, monotonous slog of a story that just so happens to have the best animation team with it. And that's it. You've got these amazing character models and movement styles, and they can't flex that because the story is so stop and start story loop-esque. There's just nothing going on. So much of this story is just characters talking, and that's it. And it's a boring, padded slog that I really hope I never have to watch again. Oh, but it's Ben and Polly's final story. Yeah, and Ben and Polly are barely in it. That's fun. The Evil of the Daleks. Originally intended to be the final Dalek story before Terry Nation moved to America to start a Dalek TV series. I'm very glad that didn't happen, but The Evil of the Daleks is a good note to end on. From a story perspective, I love it, it's great, it feels like a good note to end on with the Daleks, but the animation is what makes it all worth it. This and Macra are tied for my favourite animations, but this one just gets a little bit above it because it can use the animation more. Because of the different locations, and the sets, and the Daleks in it, and the number of characters in it, and all the action scenes, it can flex the animation more than Macra could. And for that reason, it just looks so much better. This, for me, is the best animation they've done. And I really hope we get more from this team. The Tomb of the Cybermen. It's good. It's a story I have a lot of nostalgia for. It's a good, breezy 4-part Cyberman story. There's very little to say about it, to be honest. I've got nothing really else to add. The Abominable Snowmen. From a story perspective, I can't really comment. I've only watched the story once, so I can't really say if it's good or bad. I didn't love it, but like, again, I've only watched it once, so take that with a grain of salt. But the animation. Oh boy. Okay. We'll get more into it with Fury. But again, I just don't like this animation style.
For me, when it comes to Doctor Who animation, there's two things you have to do. Facial expressions and movement. Those are the two things when it comes to Doctor Who animations, or for me, animation in general, that can save or kill something. And when it comes to the Abominable Snowmen, or any animation from this team, it kills it. These designs cannot emote for the life of them, so reading facial expressions is near impossible, and the movement always just looks off. It's always just stiff, and I don't like that, because it always takes me out. Especially when in the Abominable Snowmen you've got scenes where the titular Yeti, the Abominable Snowmen, are trying to suffocate people. And it kind of just looks like shit, because the animation is sort of jerkily moving side to side, and it just doesn't work for me. It's worse in Fury for me, but it's not great in Abominable. The Ice Warriors. This is a story that I have flip-flopped on more than any other. Like, when I watched this for the first time, this was one of my least favourite Doctor Who stories of all time. I hated the side cast, I hated the Ice Warriors, I hated the pacing, I hated the tone, I just didn't like it. But then I rewatched it, and it just worked. It went from like a 2 to a 7, where all of a sudden, I like the Ice Warriors, I like the side cast, I like the plot, I like the pacing of the plot. And then I rewatched it a third time, and now I'm in this weird middle zone with it, where I don't know how I feel about the Ice Warriors, both as a race and as a story. I don't know, I can't really give a solid opinion on this one. The animation, I have also come around on. The movement in the Ice Warriors is smooth. Buttery smooth. The faces are restrictive, but the actual puppet animation that they're going for does give them a sort of squash and stretch element, to be honest. So it does kind of work in its favour, and it's not like the animation is required to do any heavy lifting, to be honest. Admittedly, it does look a bit off with the Ice Warriors themselves. It's namely with everyone else that the animation is good. It's just with the Ice Warriors that it does look off. The Enemy of the World. Only watched it once. Can't really give a solid opinion on it. I remember liking it. I remember thinking it was a nice Bond-esque story to give to Troughton. I remember not hating the pacing, but I can't really remember much about it other than the ending and the opening episode. I don't know. Again, needs to go on the rewatch list. Oh boy. Web of Fear. Let me come out of the gate and just say, even as a story, I'm not a big Web of Fear fan. I get why people are. It does look good. But for me, the pacing is what kills it, and I'm just not in love with this pseudo unit. I can see how people could like it, and fair play to them, but I'm just not a Web of Fear fan. But let's face it, we're all here to talk about the animation. First of all, bless this team for trying. No disrespect to anyone on the animation team, they did the best with the tools they had. Second of all, I'm not against 3D or mocap for an animation. For an animated reconstruction, I fully believe that that is the way to go. I am a 2D animator. I love 2D animation, and I love 2D in general. But even I will admit that 3D, especially mocap, is probably better for the animated reconstructions to make things more lifelike and a bit more screen accurate. Also, this was probably the best place to practice it on, because it's just the one episode you've got to do. It's not a full 4-parter, or a 6-parter, or a 12-parter. It's just one single episode, along with a telesnap reconstruction, so the actual mocap thing is optional. So fair play to the team for doing the best that they had, and bless them for trying. But is there really anything that I can add? Literally everything wrong with the Web of Fear animation can kind of be seen by just looking at it. Just just by watching it in motion. Facial animation? There is none. You get one expression with every single model. Every single model is either weirdly stylized or just frankly weirdly proportioned. The movement is either way too stiff or way too exaggerated. The sets look nice. But again, like with Galaxy 4, my biggest compliment to your animated reconstruction should not be the backgrounds look nice. I will say, from what we've seen from the Celestial Toymaker, that looks like an improvement. The actual style looks better with this sort of shading, painting, patchwork type thing. I like that it's using a more abstract style for the animation, and the movement and the models themselves do look better. I'm cautiously optimistic for the Celestial Toymaker, and we'll have to wait and see until that comes out. And again, I'm not opposed to mocap. I do think in the right hands it's the best way to go forward. But I really hope it works and they've ironed out the kinks with it. Here we go. Fury from the Deep. Fury from the Deep is a story that for years I was enamored with, and I'd never seen it. I just knew Fury from reputation alone as this murky, dark, scary, atmospheric story that was like one of the lost classics of the Troughton era. And then it comes out, and from a story perspective, again, only watched it once, I wasn't really in love with it. You do realise quite quickly, oh, the villain is just foam and seaweed. Okay, but it's the animation. It's the animation that kills it for me. This, to me, is worse than the Web of Fear. This, to me, is my least favourite animated reconstruction. If I had to make it like a tier list, Fury from the Deep's at the dead bottom last, because everything about it is off. The lighting is non-existent. There is no atmosphere in any scene. You get bold block colours, and that's it. The models themselves, same problems with Galaxy 4 and Abominable Snowmen. Facial expressions are non-existent, and the movement's off. The movement in this one in particular has a weirdly low frame rate that makes all hand movements and arm gestures and walk cycles look laggy, and I don't get how that happens. The compositing is also bad because you get so many scenes of just characters facing each other, or just lines of characters staring at things instead of any sort of dynamic posing or anything like that. This shot on the cover does not exist. There is more facial expression and dynamic posing on the cover than there is at any point in the story. Additionally, the story requires a lot of over-exaggerated movements, like the bit at the end with the helicopter chase and the giant seaweed monsters. And that really should have been given to another team, because it just doesn't work with this style. It looks so cheap when they do the helicopter thing at the end. If this story couldn't even get right that the opening shot of the TARDIS is spinning down, and in this animation it is a single PNG motion tweening down, then what does it get right other than nice backgrounds? Again, that should not be my major compliment for your animated reconstruction. Anywho, Doki Hockey and the Dom Dads, only watched it once, hated it, probably need to give it another shot, but I'm not in a hurry. I'm currently moving stuff around in my room right now, so just ignore the Sharda console and this pop Jodie Whittaker for a minute. Where was I? The Mind Robber. You know me. I love fun Doctor Who. I love fun, silly, imaginative Doctor Who. And this story just hits all the right notes for me. We just think about the limitless possibilities of the land of fiction for a minute. Because recently, Winnie the Pooh and Steamboat Willie got added to the public domain. I hereby vote that we get a new series story that takes place in the land of fiction for the sole purpose that the Doctor can now canonically meet Winnie the Pooh and Steamboat Willie. You look me dead in the fucking eyes and you tell me you don't want to see that. The Invasion, featuring the basic introduction of Unit, the Brigadier, featuring Big Finish's favourite Cyberman design. My god, am I sick of it. It's a good design, I'm just so sick of it by this point. We've got Tobias Vaughan, who, if you know anything about the Wilderness Years, you know is a villain that refuses to die. It's 8 parts long, and again, I've only watched it once, and I didn't love it, but I can see how people could love it. The animation itself works here. Now, I know what you're thinking. Will, you just went on a massive rant about how Fury from the Deep doesn't work because of its stiff animation. And you went off on one about Faceless Ones because it was good animation on a boring episode. What gives the Invasion a free pass? I'm gonna explain that now. The Faceless Ones is a story that is very character-based. It's a lot of dialogue scenes between characters, and very little actually happens. But it was given to the best animation team. So what you have is this incredible animation being wasted on something that doesn't need it, because all you're doing is dialogue and character scenes. Now, Fury, on the other hand, is a story with a lot more action in it. From Gary Russell's admission, it's a story that they added a lot of action in it, with like the helicopter thing and the seaweed monsters and all that. And that is a story that needed the good animation team because of what was expected of it. But instead, you get the stiff animation team, and as a result, Fury from the Deep is a story that needed good animation, but got the stiff one. In the case of the Invasion, you've got Cosgrove Hall, which are the people who did Scream of the Shalka and the Infinite Quest, I believe. So this is stiff, sharp animation. But the 2 episodes that they're animating are episodes 1 and 4. And those don't have the Cybermen in them, and they have very few actual action scenes in them. So, the stiff animation works in tandem with the episode itself because very little is happening. Stiff animation goes along well with slow burn episodes where not a lot is happening. Faceless Ones needed stiff animation because of how little is going on. Fury from the Deep needed good animation because of how much is going on. In the case of the Invasion, the animation and the episode work in tandem with each other, so you get this stylized, grimy 2 episodes of animation with decently sharp animation. I do think the style works a lot for it. I lost the tangent. You get what I mean? Faceless Ones didn't need good animation, but it got it. Fury from the Deep needed good animation, but it didn't get it. The Invasion didn't need great animation, and it got not great animation. So in a weird way, it works in tandem. The Krotons. What do you want me to say? It sure is the Doctor Who episode of all time. Pretty much everyone who's watched the Krotons has nothing to say about it, and that's really a testament to how much of a nothing story it is. Would I be excited if the Krotons were announced to be in the next series? To be honest, yeah. Am I clamouring for their return? No. The Seeds of Death. I don't know if it's just me, but I've not clicked with Seeds of Death, and I've watched this multiple times. Me and Seeds of Death, people call this the best Ice Warrior story, and for me, it's not. For me, it's Curse of Peladon, or Cold War, or even Empress of Mars. It's just not this. I think it's the pacing that kills it, and the fact that I'm not in love with the side cast, and the fact that the Ice Warriors' plan is literally foiled by pouring water on their killer foam. But, like, I'll give it this. It looks decent. The Ice Warriors are shot quite menacingly. The music, from what I remember, is alright. It's got some good cliffhangers in it. There is that infamous scene where that one Ice Warrior is incapable of turning around to see someone hiding behind a door,
But I mean, other than that, the Ice Warriors are quite decent in this. It's just not my favourite Ice Warrior story. I can't call it bad, it's just not my personal pick for a good Ice Warrior story. Here we go. The War Games. The finale to the Troutman era, the Black and White era, the 60s as a whole. I've only watched it once. I know you're sick of me hearing that, but trust me, we'll get to the point where I have seen them multiple times. I think this is the last one. But the War Games, I've only watched the once, and I'm very, very glad that when I watched it the once, I ended up liking it. Because, oh my god, if I didn't, I would be tearing this story apart. I've only watched it once, and I remember liking it. And I do want to rewatch it again, but I don't have the time. Unless I pace myself, I just don't have the time to rewatch it. But I do remember absolutely loving it. And now it's time to mosey on down to the second shelf. Here we are. We're now in the 70s, we're now in colour, and now we've got the John Pertwee. Spearhead from Space. I quite like Spearhead from Space. This, for me, is one of the quintessential Pertwee stories. It's just great in, like, a bunch of respects. Namely, just from its visuals. Due to a strike, they had to shoot the whole thing on film and on location. And it just gives Spearhead from Space, like, one of the best visual, directional... What the fuck am I saying? Spearhead from Space looks really, really good. This could have been a Doctor Who movie. I will say, it is playing it a bit too straight with it. There is a bit too much of gritty, mature, grown-up meetings, and I feel like that makes Spearhead from Space lose a bit of the Doctor Who charm. It's just a bit too serious for me, but I can't deny it's good. Like, it's still a 9. I still love it. If I'm ever in the mood to just put on a Pertwee story, this is the one I go for. It's just, for me, it loses just a tiny bit, just a tiny bit of the Doctor Who silliness, in a way. A part of me feels like it looks a bit too good, so it doesn't feel like Doctor Who, but it is still quintessentially a fantastic episode of Doctor Who. Ah yes, the Silurians, or as we Chads call it, Doctor Who and the Silurians. This, for me, is one of the best Pertwee stories, and I don't think many people would disagree with that. I actually watched this story during lockdown, and if any of you have seen Doctor Who and the Silurians, you will know that this was not a good idea, because Doctor Who and the Silurians basically has the plot of the COVID pandemic. Including an anti-vaxxer, Doctor Who and the Silurians is just, like, easily a masterclass of writing. The Silurians are interesting, deep characters. The actual setting itself is so good as just, like, an individual location. I will admit, because of the colour grading, the story does look a bit naff, to be honest, but, like, bless them for trying. And I will say, you probably could cut down it by 1 episode, or maybe even 2, and admittedly, the soundtrack and the sound design isn't great. I will still hear the Silurian recall device in my dreams tonight, but other than that, this is just one of the absolute best Pertwee stories. Like, this and Spearhead are just like a fantastic 1-2 punch. And then there's this. I hate this. Look, I like to give stories a fair shot, especially stories that I've only watched once. I have watched Ambassadors of Death, not once, not twice, not 3 times, 4 times, and I have hated it more with every rewatch. Eventually, I reach a point where I go, the story's just shit. I could criticise Ambassador of Death on numerous levels. But mainly, the fact that the story does not make a single lick of sense. Namely, with the villain of the story, General Carrington. I think that's his name. And the only reason I know his name is because I've written all this down for a third Doctor ranking video, and because I hate General Carrington. General Carrington is a guy who goes up in a Mars probe along with some other astronaut, and he meets some Martians, but not the Ice Warriors. He meets this lot, and this lot accidentally kill the other guy, but General Carrington escapes somehow and gets back to Earth. Then, over the course of about 2 years, or maybe a year, or however long, concocts the most batshit insane plot I think I've ever seen. A plan which involves sending more astronauts to the Mars probe so that the Martians would kidnap them, so that General Carrington can then bring them back down to Earth, so that he can then kidnap them and keep them in a room where they feed them with radiation so that he can use them to do his dirty work for them. Also that he can show off the Martians to the public so that he can start a war with the Martians because he wants revenge because his astronaut friend died. Because he's just xenophobic for some fucking reason. Nothing about ambassadors makes sense. And it's not that I've watched this story all in one go and it gets boring because it's like 3 hours. No, I have paced myself with ambassadors. I watch like 2 or 3 episodes a day and then leave it and then come back the next day and watch the rest of it. Or something like that. I've paced myself with this story. And every time it loses me. Nothing about ambassadors makes a single lick of sense. I don't know what's his name, the glasses guy with the beard that like holds a gun at Liz Shaw in like the part 1 cliffhanger. He's still in the story for the rest of it, despite the fact that he did that. I don't know why. The soundtrack's decent. I'll give it that. It's got a decent soundtrack, but like, that should not be my major compliment for a story. Additionally, everyone in this story is visibly bored out of their sockets. There's that one bit in like part 4, I think, when the third Doctor goes up into space to go to the other Mars probe or some shit. And it's namely the Mars probe crew, the actual like announcer guy and the receptionist, like the blonde receptionist. They are so visibly not giving a shit and audibly not giving a shit that it's actually kind of insulting. By the time I got to episode 7 on my most recent rewatch, I just stuck the episode on ×2 speed because it just made it go by quicker. You can call that a cardinal sin, but like, I am consistently, repeatedly bored shitless by the ambassadors of death. And I want to like it. I want to say that season 7 is a flawless season, that it's one of the best, but like, this thing sticks out like a sore thumb compared to Spearhead, Silurians, and Inferno. I have given it every possible chance, and I just don't think the story works in general. Anyway, Inferno, let's talk about good Doctor Who now. Okay, is Inferno good? Yes, it's a good story. It's a damn good story. I'm not denying that for a second. But, like, is it the best Pertwee story ever made compared to all the rest? Let's consistently vote this in Doctor Who magazine as the best Pertwee story, put it above on all the others on a pedestal as the quintessential best one? In my opinion, no. Inferno is good. Like, I'm not denying that for a second. It's Inferno, for God's sake. But, like, I just think there's better stories that represent the Pertwee era better. Like, if you say Pertwee era, my mind doesn't go, Inferno's the best one. I'd say, like, Spearhead, Silurians, Demons, Sea Devils, Carnival Monsters, Time Warrior. I'm not saying Inferno is bad. I'm just saying there's better stories that I think would represent the era as a whole, to me at least. I feel like if you're gonna put a story on a pedestal as like the best of an era, then that story has to have all of, or at least some of, the things that are universally acclaimed for that era. So for the Pertwee era, you would think that would mean Unit, Joe Grant, The Master, or something like that, but Inferno doesn't really have that. Inferno, to be honest, is a very not Pertwee story, and I just don't think it works as like the best of the Pertwee era for me. That's just me. It's good, it's damn good, it's just not what I'd say is the best of this era. And now for our first collection box set. Ooh, Season 8. I'm going to angle the camera a little better so you can see that. The light, the sun's kind of gone now, so the footage might get a bit grainy, so apologies for that. Season 8. Yeah, it's good. It's good. I don't really have any strong feelings towards it, but like, it's good. Terror of the Autons is a pretty good story. I'm a Spearhead fan, but I like Terror. The Mind of Evil on rewatch, surprisingly, I've actually come around on. Like, I actually really like The Mind of Evil. Claws of Axos got worse for me. It's namely because it plays all of its interesting ideas in part 1. So then for parts 2, 3, and 4, it's just meandering. You'll get what I mean if you watch it again, but like, it's just sort of a meandery story. Weirdly, Colony in Space is great now. I don't know what happened, but I've come around on Colony in Space. I love Colony in Space now. That was a big surprise for me. And, yeah, The Demons is good. I wouldn't say it's fantastic, namely because part 1 and part 5 are the best ones, and then there's sort of a lot of fluff in the middle, but like, it's still good. If you have the collection set, I would highly recommend watching the omnibus version of the story, because in my opinion, it's a lot better. But like, as a whole, I think Season 8's great. Change the angle real quick, just because the lighting's a bit weird, so hopefully that looks a bit better. Anyway, Day of the is a pretty good story. You know, the Ogrons are pretty good antagonists. I like the sort of inversion of the guerrilla warfare thing, where you think they're the good guys, but then it's like, you know, changing history is a pretty fanatical idea. Day of the also looks really nice, to be honest. There's nothing really visually I can say wrong with it. The special edition does leaps and bounds for it. I've only ever watched the special edition because I think it just eclipses the original in every way. But, you know, Day of the is honestly pretty decent. Oh, wait a second, what's this? Oh, the Daleks are in this? Oh yeah, there they are! Yeah, it's universally agreed that the weakest aspect of Day of the Daleks is the fact that the Daleks aren't that great, and that's because the story wasn't meant to have them in it. They were sort of retroactively added in, and as a result, their dialogue and their scenes aren't really that interesting. To be honest, the episode as a whole is a bit of a 6 for me. I really want to like it, and I feel like if I'm in the right mood, I could, but at the minute, it's just a 6 for me. The Curse of Peladon. This, for me, is a very Marmite story. I can see how a lot of people love it, but I can equally see how a lot of people would hate it. Peladon, as a whole, is a very talky place. All of the stories across all mediums are very talky political dramas, and if you're not on board for that, then this story and any Peladon story can be an instant turn-off. I love it because it's a kooky alien monster mash in a haunted castle, but I can very easily see how people would not like it. I love Agador, I love Alpha Centauri, I find Peladon just a lovely, rich planet, and I love that this story finally gives the Ice Warriors something interesting to stand out by making them a peaceful race that subvert the expectations of the audience and make them a cool, honorary, samurai-like race. I sure hope that literally every Ice Warrior story afterwards keeps that going. Docky Hockey and the Sea Friends. Look, Doctor Who and the Silurians is, like, objectively the better story. The Silurians are actual characters. The story has a darker, more mature tone. It's got an extra part, which means it gets to flesh out the world a bit more. And it leads to this absolutely gut-wrenching ending as we see this race of Silurians wiped out because of man's fear of them. But man, Sea Devils is just more fun. It loses an episode, so there's less padding. The Sea Devils are not characters in the slightest. They are very much grunt monster soldiers with, let's face it, a stupid-looking design, but a cool design, and it's got the Master in it. That's cool. Like, if I'm gonna watch some of the best Doctor Who ever, I'll put Silurians on. But if I just want a damn good, fun Pertwee story that's got pretty much everything from the Pertwee era that I love in it, along with genuinely good effects, good location filming, some of the best Master and Doctor dynamic writing, and an absolutely dog shit soundtrack, then I'm gonna put on Docky Hockey and the Sea Friends. Oh god, but my voice is actually starting to go. A minute, I'm gonna need to have a drink. Hydration is important, kids. Anyway, now let's talk about an episode that isn't fun. The Mutants. This is pretty much universally agreed to be one of the worst Pertwee stories. And you know, I'm finding it hard to disagree with that. What do I like about the Mutants? The cave scenes look fun. The model shots look good. The mutant design is interesting. Conceptually, I love the idea of a race that over the course of hundreds of years goes through seasons at a much slower pace, and that mutating is a natural part of their evolution. But because it takes so long to happen, nobody ever remembers it and they think it's a plague. That conceptually is a good idea, especially with this totalitarian dictatorship coming down and thinking that there's a plague going on and trying to take over the planet. That's a good idea. The problem is literally everything else in this story. The Mutants is just a soul-sucking experience that never gets going. Oh my god, The Mutants is so fucking boring. And as well as that, it's the genesis of one of my absolute favourite Doctor Who tropes, that being the grey-white spaceship interior. I would rather a story go all out, balls to the wall, abstract, weird, and have it look like shit, like in Claws of Axos, than sit in another grey-white spaceship interior. You have no idea how much I hate grey-white spaceship interiors, and we're going to be seeing a whole lot more of them, don't worry. So now that I've torn the Mutants to shreds, I bet you're all dying to know, what does Mr. Oxley, the guy who praised the hell out of the Underwater Menace and the Chase, think of the Time Monster? I will say this. The Time Monster might just be one of my favourite Pertwee stories if you cut out episodes 3 and 4. You objectively get a better story if you cut those out. Everything else in this story I absolutely adore, but all you need to do is cut out that middle hour and you just get a fantastic season finale-esque Master God story. I genuinely really love the Time Monster, and I'd love to do a fan edit of it where you just cut out or trim down that middle chunk. I think, was it Robert Sloman who wrote this? It was Robert Sloman. Apparently, Robert Sloman, wrote the finale, then the last 2 episodes, then the first 2, and then the middle? I think Davis mentioned that in one of his commentary videos, And when you watch The Time Monster, my god, that makes so much sense, because this episode grinds to a halt in its middle chunk. If you haven't watched The Time Monster, I would genuinely recommend watching parts 1 and 2, skipping 3 and 4, and then watching 5 and 6. Because all you miss in episode 3 and 4 is the Master dicking around with his time watch, and the Doctor and Joe hopping in the TARDIS and trying to get to Atlantis. Episode 4 is entirely dedicated to getting to Atlantis. Episode 5 is when they actually get to Atlantis. The Time Monster is so fun and batshit insane, but it is so slow in that last chunk. If you just cut out that last chunk, you genuinely get one of the best 4-part Pertwee stories. Like, honestly. Season 10. Season 10 is a mixed bag for me. On the one hand, you have the 3 Doctors, Carnival of Monsters, The Green Death. 3 stories that I absolutely love. Carnival of Monsters is one of my favourite stories, The Green Death is one of my favourite stories, and The 3 Doctors is kind of alright. It's sort of, by technicality, like one of the weaker multi-Doctor stories, because the show doesn't really know how to celebrate itself. It's less so 3 Doctors team up to face down an evil Time Lord in a black hole multi-Doctor epic, and more like intense TARDIS interior meetings part 37. So much of that story is spent in the TARDIS interior, to the point that it's distracting. But, like, it's still a good story, it's still a solid 7 out of 10 story. But on the other hand, you have Planet of the Daleks, which is a very nothing story to me, and Frontier in Space. I hate Frontier in Space. I, like Ambassadors of Death, have rewatched Frontier in Space numerous times, and I hate it with a burning passion. Let me ask you a question. Does the Doctor and Joe switching prison cells, explaining the situation, being called spies, and then getting locked in a prison cell for 2 fucking hours sound fun? Because I don't think it's fun. I hate everyone in Frontier in Space. Literally every single character. General Williams has the same issues as General Carrington, where I only know him because I hate him. He's like meant to be some security officer who works with, I think, like the president of Earth at the Earth Embassy. And we are told frequently in the story that General Williams started a war with Draconia. Like, it's not a hidden fact. Like, it's common knowledge. They bring it up all the time. In which case, I do have to ask, why the fuck is General Williams working at the Earth Embassy for the Draconian Empire? This man should be in the fucking space prison. What do people see the Draconians? I don't like disagreeing with people's opinions and saying that people are wrong, but really, what the fuck is everyone on about when they say, oh, the Draconians are one of the best races in Doctor Who because they have so much lore, and they're like samurais, and they have this code of honor, and they're dragons, and that's cool. They really aren't. The Draconians are a very interesting race because they pronounce every single syllable individually. So you, the watcher, are very bored when watching Frontier in Space because they take a fucking eternity to finish a sentence. That's not fun to me. I could dedicate a whole video as to how much dedicated to how much I hate Frontier in Space. And if I ever get round to that 3rd Doctor ranking video, my god, you are going to hear me tear Frontier in Space apart like nobody's business. I don't like telling people what I love. I don't. There are probably people watching this that love Frontier in Space, and I am so sorry, because I don't like hating Doctor Who. I don't. look at this whole fucking collection, I clearly love Doctor Who. I don't like calling things in Doctor Who bad. But I am sorry. To me, Frontier in Space is bad. It's not just like a naff episode. It's bad. Can we talk about good Doctor Who now? Oh, there we go. Docky Hockey and the Spudman. I love Docky Hockey and the Spudman. I love Pentwhistle, SJA, and Spudman. Spudman's my favourite Doctor Who character. I fucking love Spudman, dude. I fucking love Spudman, my guy. Spud Time Warrior. I love the Time Warrior. The Time Warrior is just one of my absolute favourite Pertwee stories, because it's weirdly not a good Pertwee story, as in, like, it sticks to things we associate with the Pertwee era. If I've learnt one thing from rewatching the whole Pertwee era, it's that, weirdly, the Pertwee era is at its best when it's not being like the Pertwee era. I know that sounds like a backwards version of describing it, but that's just how I feel. I love the side cast in this. I adore Lynx. The story looks phenomenal. Who knew that actually filming a story that takes place in a castle, in an actual castle, would make the story look good? The pacing's good. Pretty much just everything about the Time Warrior is good. It's one of those stories that I can just rewatch on a loop. Invasion of the Dinosaurs. Here's the thing. Invasion of the Dinosaurs has quite a few bad ideas in it that makes me say I didn't love it. However, there are enough good ideas in it, a lot of good, interesting ideas, that I actually would say that I liked it. Invasion is not a bad story to me. It's just not one that I love. It's very much a 6 out of 10. There's enough in it that I can say it's not great. But there's enough in it that's good that I can say it's really good. I feel like if they were going to do a collection set for this, and if they would go the full mile and redo the dinosaur effects, I kind of hope that they do keep them a bit shitty. Like, if they do revival era CGI with these realistic 4K dinosaurs, it's going to lose a lot of its charm. I feel like they should make visually off dinosaurs. Because, like, in the 70s, they didn't quite fully understand dinosaur biology in that, so obviously a lot of illustrations look a bit off. Like, if they really wanted to go the full mile, oh god, what's that one film? My dad watches it all the time. That one film from, like, the 50s and the 60s. I think, is it Hercules? I can't remember, but you know what I mean? Like, those 50s, 60s films that would use, like, stop motion for giant monsters. If they want to go the full mile, do that, because that would be charming. And you know what? Still make it look a bit shit. That's the charm of Invasion of the Dinosaurs. Also, the story has the Whomobile in it. I love the Whomobile. Uh-oh. Look out, everybody. It's Nicholas Briggs's favourite Dalek story. Actually, just favourite story in general. Fair enough. I'm a Victory of the Daleks stan. I can't really complain. Death to the Daleks. It's good. It's not got a good soundtrack, but it's good. I love this Dalek design. Honestly, if I were to redesign the Daleks, I'd probably make this something that looked like the Dalek paradigm. But, you know, this colour scheme works. The Exelons are a pretty interesting race. This story has Belial in it. We cannot underplay that. The story introduces Belial. Who the fuck doesn't love Belial? The pacing's good. Sarah does get quite a bit to do in this story. The soundtrack is admittedly ass. I know I've mentioned it before, but really. The Monster of Peladon. Oh boy. You know, when I watched The Curse of Peladon, I thought, gosh, you know what this breezy, 4-part Ice Warriors a good story really needs? It needs to be a 6-parter where the Ice Warriors are surprise villains and the Ice Warriors are back to being generic villains. My favourite! Monster of Peladon honestly kind of infuriates me more than Frontier, because the Monster of Peladon is just boring. To put this into perspective, I watched Frontier in Space around, like, November. And because of my notes, and because of what I felt watching it, I can distinctly remember every single thing that I hated about it in detail. I vividly remember scenes and dialogue that I hated. I watched The Monster of Peladon last week, and I cannot tell you anything about it, like, at all. Well, there are a few things, but, like, you get what I mean. It's just boring. It's just so boring and monotonous. You can just cut the first 3 parts from The Monster of Peladon, and you probably get a better story. It's that fluffy. The Ice Warriors are back to being generic evil villains. My favourite, Alpha Centauri is still here. That's decent. I do like the scene where Sarah Jane sort of introduces women's lib to Queen Thriller? And she's just basically just like, you're the Queen of Peladon, you need to learn how to put your foot down. And I like how Queen Thrilla's like, yeah, I need to put my foot down. And I like that. That's a nice scene. But just everything else in this story is so... I do really love a side cast where we have a guy who's a part of a workforce and an asshole in the workforce. And the guy is like, alright, we're in a shit situation. I'm gonna go negotiate with the higher-ups. And then the asshole is like, no, we need to fight. We need to go in there guns a-blazing and fight them. And the guy is like, no, that is a terrible idea. This is why I'm in charge. You lot stay here. And then after he leaves, the asshole is like, yeah, well, I'm going to put together my own ambush. We're going to rob the weapons store. And then we cut to the guy in the peace agreement, and it's like, well, great. I'm glad we could negotiate this peace agreement, guys. And then the fucking ambush comes in, and it's like, haha. And then some guy in the higher-ups is just like, oh, see, these miners are nothing more than savages. This was all part of a trap. And then everyone escapes. And then the guy goes up to the asshole and is like, hey, dude, what the fuck? No, what the fuck? You did the thing that I told you not to do, and now we're in a worse situation. And the asshole's like, yeah, well, we've got weapons now. And then they just keep doing that for 6 episodes. Great. Glad to know that the episode could have been over a lot quicker, but instead we had to dick about with the fucking Afro kids. Yeah. Also, I forgot about this. This story commits the cardinal sin of killing Agador. They didn't need to kill off Agador, but they made the conscious effort to it. Brian, nobody forced you to kill off Agador, alright? They make an effort of it. They bring Agador back into the story, and it's like, oh, he's a little bit older, but Agador's still got the spirit. And then Agador fucking leaps on the main villain, and he fucking Agador's all over the place. And then they shoot him with a laser pistol. Why? You didn't have to kill off Agador. You brought back Agador in this, like, big triumphant moment, and then you killed him off. Brian, you made a conscious effort to kill off Agador. I can't let that slide. Agador was the fucking GOAT. He's the fucking GOAT of the Curse of Peladon. And you just fucking shoot him. You shoot Agador. I can't let that slide. I can't let that slide, man. I fucking love Agador. You didn't have to kill him off. You didn't have to kill him off. Literally every Peladon story, after Monster of Peladon, brings back Agador in some form. And I like that, because I like Agador. But why? Why did you fucking kill off Agador, dude? I fucking love Agador, dude. Agador is the GOAT, my guy. And I have to dock points. I have to dock major points from the Monster of Peladon for killing off Agador. I can't let that slide. Planet of the Spiders. I'm gonna be honest. I really love Planet of the Spiders. Like, nearly everything in Planet of the Spiders, I love. I don't know how to address the subject of Tommy, so I'm not going to touch that subject with a 50-foot fucking pole, but other than that, literally everything in Planet of the Spiders I love. Oh, but Will, Episode 2 has the car chase in it that's purely for padding. Didn't you complain about that in one of the other episodes that I can't remember right now? Yeah, but this time it's fun. This isn't like the Time Monster, where we dedicate a whole episode to the TARDIS interior and trying to get to the location. This is a fun, James Bond action-packed bad green screen chase scene across the English countryside with Bessie and the Hoomobile and a random helicopter that they just found lying around. I love everything in this story. I love the spiders, I love Sarah, I love Pertwee. I just love the actual vibe of the whole story with framing regeneration in a Buddhist lens. That's cool. I love that the story feeds the Third Doctor some humble fucking pie and he has to make the conscious effort to sacrifice himself. Oh my god. I don't want to get into it, but one of my least favourite things in the Pertwee era is how untouchable this Doctor feels at times. I like that his final story makes him have to sacrifice himself. I love that. I just love everything about Planet of Spiders. It has the scope and scale and the tone, the fun tone and the emotional tone that I want from Doctor Who. And that's just brilliant to me. Also, I just love the fact that this story has giant spiders in it. That's just a personal thing. And as well as that, I just love it when the Doctor Who production team just goes out of their effort to scare the living shit out of children. Oh my god, if they ever do season 11 on a collection set, I would love to see Planet of Spiders, but with CGI spiders. I love the spiders in this already, but they could make them even more terrifying, and I need to see what that looks like. Season 12, featuring the debut of Titty Tingler Tom. Season 12, again, it's a mixed bag for me. On the one hand, you've got The Ark in Space and Genesis of the Daleks, which, you know, I shouldn't need to tell you, are absolute bangers. Then you've got Robot and Revenge of the Cybermen, which I'm not particularly big fans of, to be honest. And then you've got the Sontaran Experiment, like, right in the middle. I don't really know what to do with the Sontaran Experiment. It doesn't even stay around long enough for me to form a love it or hate it opinion. It's just kind of there. I can't really fault anything in this season. Like, it's iconic for a reason. Tom Baker is great. Elizabeth Sladen is great. Harry Sullivan is here. And I mean, I don't know, it's just a solid season. I'd probably have to give it a rewatch on the whole. But I don't know, I've got no major complaints. I had to turn another lamp on because it keeps getting dark. I really apologise if this video looks like shit because of that. Anyway, Terror of the Zygons. Okay, here's a weird hot take for you all. I don't like Terror of the Zygons as an episode. I like Terror of the Zygons as a target novel. I don't know how that works, but something about the story doesn't work for me on screen. It feels weirdly slow, and it does look cheap in places. But, like, I don't know what it is. As a novel, it just works a lot better. There's a reason, obviously, the Zygons stuck around, like, iconic design and, you know, cool gimmick, but, like, I don't know. Again, probably needs another rewatch, but, like, I don't know. I just didn't mesh with it. My voice is hurting again. Need to go to another drink break. Oh god, it's Planet of Evil next, isn't it? Oh, fuck. Planet of Evil. Oh boy, I sure love Planet of Evil, let me tell you. But Will, this story is really praised. The jungle set looks great. And, like, they got into some fucking magazine for it because it was that good. Yeah, the jungle set is good. But one, again, like with the animated reconstructions, your major compliment to a story should not be that the backgrounds are nice. And two, it sure would be nice if the story took place in that fucking jungle, but it doesn't. The story takes place either in a grey building or, say it with me now, a grey-white spaceship interior with the most fucking boring sidecast imaginable. oh, but it's a sci-fi version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Yeah, in the last 2 episodes, and it's not really Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, it's basically the fucking Hulk. I've got nothing. Planet of Evil is a boring slog to me, which is weird because it's a 4-parter. But then I remember it was written by Louis Marks, and suddenly it all makes sense. In complete fucking contrast, Pyramids of Mars. Pyramids of Mars is probably one of my favourite stories of all time. And I don't think that's going to be a surprise to anyone. Great villain, great monsters, great effects, great use of Sarah, great use of the Doctor, great sidecast, great use of time travel, great score, great direction. This is the whole package. Season 13 is such a weird one because it's heralded as like Tom Baker's best. And like, yeah, but the good stories really overshadow the bad ones, and there are bad ones in season 13, but like those good ones, they just completely eclipse the bad ones. Me and Pyramids of Mars also go like way back. I think it was for the 50th that they started transmitting Classic Who episodes on like Freeview for a bit, and I was glued to the telly. I had to see it. And I saw quite a few episodes. I think I namely saw Spearhead, Ark in Space, Sontaran Experiment, Earthshock, Vengeance on Varos, but Pyramids of Mars, man. Pyramids of Mars was the one that I remember the most vividly. And even as a kid, I was enamored with this story. So when I got into the DVD range, this was one of the first ones I saw out. Me and Pyramids of Mars, it's special for us. Okay, we're in a special kind of relationship. Android Invasion. Yeah, it's shit. It's a bad Terry Nation script that uses everything that Terry Nation is infamous for. It's good when it's shot on location, I guess. The Invasion of the Body Snatchers thing is a good idea, I guess. I don't know. What do you want from me? It's the Android Invasion. Oh, do you want me to talk about the Kral? The fan favourite villain, the Kral? Do you mean the Sontarans, if they were more boring and they were rhinos? I don't want to talk about the Kral. I don't want to talk about the Kral in, like, any capacity. Also, who is that one fucking guy at Big Finish who is obsessed with them? Because they've got, like, a whole 2-parter with the 4th Doctor, and they're in, like, the Unbound Doctor of War range? Who is the one guy who is obsessed with the Kral? Stop it! Nobody likes the Kral. Again, in just complete contrast, Brain of Morbius. I love the Brain of Morbius so much. This, along with Pyramids, is just like one of my quintessential Tom Baker stories. I just love everything here. The direction, the tone, the vibe, the Sisterhood of Khan, Solon, his minion whose name escapes me right now, who gets shot with an actual gun and whose stomach explodes. I just love everything about Brain of Morbius, especially Morbius himself. It's just a good time. Also, as a timeless child defender, I like the fact that this story has the Morbius Doctor in it. The Seeds of Doom. This is how you do a 6-parter. Who knew that to make a 6-parter fun and interesting, all you needed to do was change in location at the midpoint? Who'd have thought? Tom Baker's great in this, Liz Sladen's great in this, the villains are great in this, I love the Krynoids, I love both locations in both the Arctic base and this rural house in the middle of the countryside. I love Scorby. Who doesn't love Scorby? I will say, Tom Baker is weirdly brutal in this story. Like, I know we associate Pertwee with being the one who would, like, beat the shit out of villains and that, but Tom Baker is out for blood in this story. He snaps a guy's neck at one point, and the guy's fine, but, like, you hear an audible crack, and it's just weird watching as a Doctor Who fan. Season 14. Oh, this is the good shit, alright? I know throughout this video I've been praising the silly Doctor Who, the camp Doctor Who, the goofy Doctor Who, and I know that's not to everyone's taste. But believe me when I say that season 14 is the good shit. I like Doctor Who being fun and whimsical and magical and fun and funny. But something about season 14, man, something about this season just itches that part of the back of my head that says, yeah, well, what if Doctor Who was really dark? This season just does it for me. And it's a testament that, like, season 14 is typically not what I come to Doctor Who for, but it's that good that I'm just in love with it. I'm in love with the vibe of this season, the tone, just the atmosphere of, like, every story, even in the bad ones. Like, Mask of Mandragora is not a story that I love, but just the dark tone of it kind of wraps me in and gives me this warm, fuzzy feeling, which is weird considering that this season is known for being the dark one. The Mask of Mandragora, it's fine, but, like, I can't call it bad. I like The Hand of Fear. The Deadly Assassin is an all-time classic. I really like The Faceless One. Not The Faceless Ones, fuck that story. The Face of Evil, that's just a childhood story for me, because it was one of the first I had on DVD. The Robots of Death, I don't know how I feel about Robots of Death yet. I'll get back to you on that one. And then The Talons of Weng-Chiang, ignoring the giant elephant in the room there, is just a fantastic episode. I can't fault it on that. I can fault it on the racism. Season 15, we're changing angles because I'm nearly at the end of my desk space here, so I'm gonna have to pull them out like this. Yeah. Horror of Fang Rock. I love Horror of Fang Rock. Horror of Fang Rock is just a damn good time. Everyone in the side cast dies. Tom Baker is giving it a deadly serious performance. Leela gets a lot to do. The lighthouse itself is such a cool setting. The Rutan looks like shit, but you know what? I'm just happy to see the Rutans. I love Horror of Fang Rock so much. The Invisible Enemy. Oh shit. This is the story that introduces K9, and that is the only interesting thing in it. I don't get how you do a Fantastic Voyage thing and you make that boring, but they found a way. The Swarm is not a particularly interesting villain. It looks good in pictures, but, like, then you watch it in the story and you realize it's a giant fucking prawn. It's the Invisible Enemy annoys me with how boring it is. Like, how is it boring? How? Image of the Fendal. Image of the What was that voice crack? Image of the Fendal is a story that everyone kept telling me is great because it's this big finale to the Hinchcliffe Gothic horror era, and it's so gothic and dark, and it's got all this witchcraft and satanic imagery in it. It's so good. And it's really not. Image of the Fendal is a very slow burn episode that never really burns to anything bright. The Fendal themselves, I used to love them. I used to have, like, the 100 Scariest Monsters book as a kid, and I was enamored with them. And then I watched them in this story, and they look like shit. It's just a very slow story that never really goes anywhere. It's really not my cup of tea. Anywho, the Sunmakers. I love the Sunmakers. Just on every level. I like it when Doctor Who political commentary is as subtle as a fucking brick. Screw you, kids. We're talking about Robert Holmes's hatred of the tax market today. I just love the Sunmakers so much on nearly every level. It's fun, it's funny, and it's satirical. It's politically satirical. Oh boy. Underworld. I rewatched this one very recently, and I will admit, the story got better. I actually know what the story is this time, but it's just not good, man. It's just not good on, like, any level. I appreciate the effort. as like a sci-fi version of Jason and the Argonauts, but like, it shouldn't be riding on that and that alone. The Doctor and Leela have barely anything to do in this story because the story is just sci-fi Jason and the Argonauts without any effort to put the Doctor actually in it. The actual villains in this story, the dictatorship on this planet, they're just evil for reasons. We never find out how this society got this way. They just are in a dictatorship. There's an AI gone wrong that is so boring I can't remember a single thing about it. The actual side cast with the Quest is the Quest people, they're boring as sin. Like, Ambitious Captain and Plucky Young One. The other one that I can't remember. Girl, I can't... It got better. I can't deny that, it got better. But it's still Underworld. We're going to ignore that voice crack. We're going to ignore that voice crack. We're not going to acknowledge it at all. Invasion of Time. Invasion of Time is bad. I really hate Invasion of Time. Invasion of Time just really doesn't work in any way for me. From like a Gallifrey perspective, Time Lord perspective, companion departure perspective, Sontaran perspective. I'm gonna say it. This story's got the worst Sontarans for me. I've not seen Shakedown, but this for me is my least favourite Sontaran story. The Sontarans are a villain that you need to toe the line between funny potato men and deadly serious super soldier. That's why the Time Warrior is so good, because humour is instinctively a part of the Sontarans. That's why I really love the Chris Chibnall Sontaran stories, because they do strike that perfect balance. Invasion of Time is playing the Sontarans deadly super seriously, and that makes them so boring. I hate Storr. Is his name Storr? I don't care if I'm getting it wrong. Storr is the worst part of this story, because it's the worst looking Sontaran with the least fitting voice possible, speaking at 3 minute... Oh, what's the word? Speaking at 3 words a minute. That's season 15. It's really not a great season for Tom Baker, in all honesty. But it's not the worst one. Season 16, on so many levels, infuriates me. And we're going to get to that the longer we go through with it. But I want to take a minute to talk about the Fourth Doctor and Romana. I hate the Fourth Doctor and Romana in this. It baffles me. The Fourth Doctor and Romana 2 is my favourite Doctor and companion dynamic, and I hate them in this. Romana 1, I hate. Romana 2, I love, and I don't get how that happens, because they're the same character. The Doctor in this season is an idiot. There's no other word for it, he just is. And Romana is playing the snarkiest, bitchiest person you can possibly imagine. I've been told that this dynamic is meant to be teacher and mentor, but no, the Doctor is an idiot and consistently gets things wrong, and Romana is constantly a snarky know-it-all who is always right. That's not how you do that dynamic. You have to have Romana somewhat naive and somewhat incapable of doing certain things, and the Doctor has to show her how to do that. But they don't do that this season. They just have the Fourth Doctor be consistently wrong about things, and Romana just sarcastically being right about anything, and that's not a fun dynamic to watch. But hey, at least they're in a good series. Kind of. I will say that the Reboss Operation is a pretty underrated opener. I actually quite like the Reboss Operation. I like this planet. I like the side cast. I just like it. I don't know what else to say. It's probably the most decent story here. Pirate Planet. Oh boy. Okay. I really like the captain in this. And I like the crazy plot in this. But a part of me feels like I just want to give it a free pass because it's Douglas Adams. A lot of the other things in this story, like the side cast, the pacing, the effects, really drag the pirate planet down. Quick, how do we celebrate Doctor Who's 100th episode? I don't know. Let's have the villain be some stones in a field. Who wants another hot take? I really don't like Androids of Tara. People keep telling me that Tara is this interesting planet that they'd like to live on because the world building's interesting and because it's this interesting society. Not to me it isn't. It's just medieval England, but they've got robots. That's kind of it. This story suffers from the story loop like no other because Romana gets captured at the very start of the episode, and then she gets captured around the midpoint of the episode. So she does fuck all. The Doctor just feels like he's sleepwalking through the story, and the side cast is nothing to write home about. And the actual villain, he has a sword fight at the end, and then he just says, "I'll get you next time, Doctor," and then he just runs away. Like, that's nothing. Like, people criticize Spyfall for the same reason, because the villain just gets away. Like, that's not fulfilling. The Power of Kroll. I appreciate that Doctor Who attempted to do a kaiju story. Didn't do it well, but, you know, I don't know. I hate everyone on the oil rig. I hate the swamp people. The most interesting thing in this story is Kroll himself, and, you know, he kind of looks like shit. And then there's this thing. Look, I've been around the block with Doctor Who. Not to toot my own horn, but I have. I've watched all the classic Who. I've watched all of New Who. I've dug deep into Big Finish of all the ranges. Well, nearly all of them, but most of them, you know. The old stuff, the new stuff, stuff in the middle. I've read countless books, from target novels, to PDAs, and EDAs, and VNAs, and all that. I've read the comic books. I've been around the block. I have read, watched, listened to, played all sorts of Doctor Who. I've got Doctor Who Evacuation Earth downstairs somewhere. I'm part of a very small part of the population who have played and owned Doctor Who Evacuation Earth with a Nintendo DS. So believe me when I say this right here is my least favourite episode of Doctor Who. My least favourite Doctor Who story in the entirety of this show. What do I like here? Nothing. What don't I like here? The story, the side cast, the music, the sound design, the villain's plan, the pacing, the padding, the overuse of tropes and cliches, pretty much everything that I hate about Doctor Who is in this story. There is no other story that I despise more than this one. This one beats Frontier in Space, Monster of Peladon, Ambassadors of Death, Underworld, fucking countless other ones that I can't even think of. The Armageddon Factor is the one I hate the absolute most, because it is the one that encompasses everything that I hate about this show in one story. And the fact that it's the series finale to a quest across time and space to find all of these magical keys, and the story ends with the Black Guardian, nobody's favourite Doctor Who villain, coming in and saying, "Haha, Doctor, all I had to do was wait for you to assemble the keys for me, and now I shall take them for myself." That's just not good villain writing. That makes him sound incompetent. And then the Doctor just splits apart the key again.
forget using the limitless key of infinite power to, I don't know, I'm just throwing this out there, banishing the Black Guardian away or something like that. No, let's just break the thing that we spent 7 hours trying to get. Wow! I feel cheated. The Armageddon Clap thing. Oh my god, there was no other story that I hated. No other. There are bad stories. There are other bad stories. There are other bad stories I'm yet to talk about in this collection. But there is no other story that I hate more than this. This, to me, is the worst Doctor Who episode ever made. And when people go off on it and say, it's Orphan 55 or anything written by Chris Chibnall, I would love to know what episodes they give a free pass with that metric. Anyway, let's talk about good Doctor Who now. Season 17! Season 17 is probably the most Douglas Adams season of Doctor Who. Namely because Douglas Adams was a script editor. But you know what? I'm here. I'm all for it. I like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Let's go. I will say, Destiny of the Daleks is a terrible season opener. And probably my least favorite Dalek story. Sorry. City of Death is City of Death. What else can I say about it? It's a classic for a reason. The Creature from the Pit, it's quite decent, to be honest. It's not like the worst thing ever, if you can get past the giant dick monster. Nightmare of Eden, I'm probably going to have to rewatch that one to get a solid opinion on it. The Horns of Nimon is a terrible Christmas panto that I am in love with. Horns of Nimon is my guilty pleasure, alright? I know it's shit, but Soul Deed makes it worth it, alright? I can't fault the story for that. And Sharda. I love Sharda. Everybody loves Sharda. I can't fault the season for having Sharda in it. As well as that, interestingly, if you kind of combine City of Death and Sharda, you basically just get Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. So that's fun. Season 18, Tom Baker's final season and the first to be produced during the 80s. Weirdly enough, and again, I've mentioned that I like Doctor Who being fun and camp and silly, and season 18 is anything but that. But weirdly, I love season 18. If I'm being completely honest, season 14 and 18 are probably my favourite Tom Baker seasons. I don't know why, but they just are. The Leisure Hive is kind of a style over substance story. It's more of a story that you experience, because, like, there is no plot, basically. But I'm here for the direction and the music and the style and everything else going on it, that it just becomes like a weird hour-and-a-half long tech demo. Meglos isn't really fun, to be honest. It's not, "Mwahaha, I'm a shape-shifting cactus and I'm here to steal a giant dodecahedron and I'm fun and camp and silly." It's, the villain of this story is a shape-shifting cactus and the story is taking itself absolutely dead fucking seriously. And like, okay. Weirdly, or shall I say thankfully, I adore the E-Space trilogy. Full Circle, State of Decay, Warriors Gate are some of my favourite stories in Doctor Who. Like, I adore each of them, and I can't rank them. I cannot rank them for the life of me. Keeper of Traken, weirdly, is the one story I haven't come around on. Me and Keeper of Traken don't click. It feels very story loop-esque, and it's one of those stories where the Doctor gets accused of being a thing, and he gets locked in prison, and it's just like this long thing. I don't know, I don't vibe with Keeper of Traken, but I want to vibe with Keeper of Traken. And then Logopolis conceptually, I like. I like that the longest serving Doctor gets this universe-ending threat to deal with, along with the Master, and we're on this interesting, trippy world, and we've got the Watcher, and I love the direction, and the vibe, and the atmosphere, and the music, and the scale of Logopolis. But there's no character in it. We don't hear about how the Doctor feels about this. Adric, for being a maths geek, is weirdly not excited to be on a math planet. Nyssa watches her entire planet die and is weirdly reserved about it, and Tegan gets over the death of her aunt pretty quickly. Logopolis has the scale that I want from a regeneration story, but it doesn't have any of the character. And I know it's classic Who, I know it doesn't have like a lot of that to begin with, but like, just one line from anyone that makes them feel happy or sad or angry or anything like that. It's not here. Logopolis is a 7, but it really could have been an 8. Season 19, featuring the debut of Peter Davison as the 5th Doctor. This season is another mixed bag for me. On the one hand, you've got Kinder, The Visitation, Earthshock. Those are 3 great 4-parters. I love all 3 of them. On the other hand, you've got Black Orchid and Time Flight, which I hate. And then you've got Castrovalva and Fort of Doomsday in the middle, in this weird zone where I don't really know what to think about them. I don't know, season 19 is a very mixed bag for me. Oh boy! It's Arc of Infinity! My favourite. I hate Arc of Infinity so much. There is so little in Arc of Infinity that works. It's the return of Tegan. Except Tegan's barely in it and barely interacts with the Doctor. We've got filming in Amsterdam. Except the story doesn't take place in Amsterdam, like, oh, I don't know, City of Death, you know, it doesn't take place in its titular location, so why are we making a big deal about location filming? Omega's in it. Omega's in it, of course he is. Except he's a twist villain, which isn't fun, because anyone watching Arc of Infinity knows that Omega's in it. Oh, but what about the Time Lords? Oh yeah, the Time Lords. Yeah, this is the story that effectively kills them off as like an interesting, in-depth race. Okay, so like the story opens up with this antimatter thing fusing with the Doctor, and the Time Lords are like, oh my god, this strange antimatter creature has just fused with the Doctor. What could this mean? Now, naturally, the Time Lords come to the most logical decision of, let's execute the Doctor so that that thing can't do that. What? And then the Castellan, everybody's favourite character in the story, is like, well, how do we know that the Doctor isn't working with this creature? Like, motherfucker, everyone on Gallifrey knows that the Doctor wouldn't do that. Like, at all. Oh, yes, and of course, the most infuriating thing about Arc of Infinity, they reference, the Time Lords, reference at the start that this thing that's come out of the Arc of Infinity is antimatter. They fully say that. Like, this thing has come out of the antimatter world. At no point during the entirety of this 4-part story, up until the Part 3 cliffhanger, does anyone suggest, you don't think it's Omega, do you? You don't think it's that Time Lord that, like, expressly lives in an antimatter world? Like, I know he died, but, like, you don't think it could be Omega, do you? No, nobody at any point suggests that it's Omega. It just makes the Time Lords look so stupid, because it's the most obvious thing that Omega is somehow involved, and nobody gets that. Everyone thinks the Doctor is trying to betray the Time Lords. And we, the audience, know that he isn't. So why should we care? Anyway, Snake Dance. Let's talk about good Doctor Who now. Oh shit. Snake Dance. I love Snake Dance. Snake Dance is great. I love the Mara. I love the tone. I love Tegan. I love... Is it Martin Clunes? Is that his name? The story is admittedly a kind of a long go of, oh, the Doctor tries to tell this society that something is happening and this society doesn't believe him, so he gets locked in prison. It is a lot of that, but, like, this society is presented as a bunch of, like, arrogant, rich people, so they kind of have it coming, so it kind of makes it a bit more justified. Also, I just think Snake Dance is a little bit more weird with the concept rather than Kinder. I do think I prefer Snake Dance to Kinder, if I'm being completely honest. I'm looking at the camera now, and it keeps looking like something's glowing. Is my lamp doing that? What's going on? Mordrin Undead. Hooray! The best thing about Mordrin Undead is that it was a story that was meant to have Ian Chesterton in it. But William Russell was unavailable, so they just gave it to the Brigadier. And wouldn't you know it, that resulted in the fucking unit dating conundrum. Hooray! I can barely remember anything about Mordrin Undead, other than its terrible soundtrack, stop and start pacing, and that's about it. I like Turlo, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a ginger, but like, there's just nothing to talk about with Mordrin Undead. There's plenty more to talk about with the Black Guardian. Don't you worry, I have things to say about the Black Guardian. Terminus. I weirdly didn't hate Terminus. I don't know what it was, but I just didn't hate Terminus, to be honest. I like the Garm, the big dog dude. These guys have the loudest costumes known to man, but like, I didn't hate Terminus. I don't know what else to say. I didn't think Terminus was that bad. I hate the Black Guardian in it though, Jesus Christ. Thing about gods in the Doctor Who universe. Big universe cosmic gods. I don't hate them, but from a storytelling perspective, you have to give them some limitation. The Toymaker, for example, can basically do whatever he likes, but he has to adhere to the rules of a game. Fenric is much the same. He can maneuver things in his favour, but he has to be beaten in a game. Who else? Sutek. Sutek is stuck in a chair in Pyramids of Mars, so he has to orchestrate things to get others to do his bidding. Omega. Omega is stuck in another universe, and he has to actively bring things to him in order to do anything. That's what I mean. From a storytelling perspective, you have to give a character with infinite power a niche limitation, because otherwise they could just do anything. So the Black Guardian, of course, is the most generic evil embodiment of all evil, where it's just, I am the embodiment of evil and darkness and chaos, and I've got a fucking bird on my head, and I only speak like this because it makes me sound more menacing. And it's just, okay, why doesn't he just snap his fingers and get the Doctor out? I don't know, he just can't. And then you get to the Black Guardian trilogy, and it's like, I cannot be seen to act. The fuck does that mean? Does that mean the White Guardian is watching what you're doing? So you yourself can't kill the Doctor, because reasons. However, what you can do is kidnap this spotty little ginger prick from some English boarding school and tell him to kill the Doctor. How does that work? I'm not exactly afraid of this giant evil embodiment of darkness and chaos, where his plan basically involves kidnapping a ginger and telling the ginger to kill Peter Davison. Why should I be afraid of this guy? Enlightenment. I adore Enlightenment. Enlightenment is one of my favourite Fifth Doctor stories. Hell, it might be one of my favourite stories of all time. Just conceptually, a race of immortal people who have access to time travel and just kidnap people from the past and have giant spaceship boat races in space so that they can get to a giant crystal that grants wishes. Like, that's fun. That's cool, and it's fun. The weakest part in this episode is the Black Guardian himself, where he and the White Guardian just teleport in front of Enlightenment and are like, now we have done this, we have maneuvered things so that we can get here. And it's like, bro, you just teleported into the room, you could have come here at any time. And then the TARDIS crew come in, and it's like, the Black Guardian goes, now, Turlo, use Enlightenment to kill the Doctor. And Turlo does the fucking obvious thing of just killing the Black Guardian. And then the White Guardian's just left there, stood there going, well, guess I'll just go then. Like, ugh. I just don't like the Black and White Guardian. Like, on any level. It's because they're so generic as god characters. I just don't like them. Everything else in Enlightenment is great. It's just their presence that makes things drag a bit. The King's Demons. The King's Demons is not very good, but it's 2 parts long, so it breezes by. I'm not really a Chameleon stan. I'm not sure I want to be a Chameleon stan, but you know, I don't hate him. Honestly, I could criticize this story for a number of reasons, but like, again, it's short. If this thing was 4 parts long, it would drag like hell, but thankfully it's just 2. The 5 Doctors, otherwise known as Terrence Dix's ultimate fanfiction. The 5 Doctors is messy. It's all over the place. It's doing the best it has with so little resources. And I love it. I think Day of the Doctor is still the best anniversary special, but the 5 Doctors is really close. Just everything about it feels so earnest. And I think that's what makes me like it. The 5 Doctors has such a nice charm. I just can't help but like it. Oh, God. Oh, honey. Oh, no. Warriors of the Deep is a story that I adore. On paper. On paper, this is the best story. The Silurians meet up with the Sea Devils and their giant lizard pet dog and go, right, we're gonna go take over that aquatic base over there, steal the nuclear bomb codes, and wipe out the human race. And when the Doctor and the TARDIS crew come in and are like, no, we can negotiate peace with them, the Silurians rightly turn around and are like, no, Doctor, we've tried that twice before, and every single time the humans have killed us. The peaceful thing don't work. We're doing this our way. I love that. I like that the Silurians, like in their original story, are characters, so they're the leaders. The Sea Devils, who aren't really characters, are grunts, and I like the Merca. On paper, but this story was put through the ringer during production, and it just results in a story that tanked Doctor Who's relationship with the BBC. Oh, it was, out of every bad story here that I've complained about, Warriors stings the most. Because I fully believe as a Target novel, or if it just had the right amount of time in the oven, it could have been a classic. The Awakening. What do you want me to say? It looks nice. This thing was meant to be the next companion. I don't know how that would work. The villain is a face in a wall. I'm tired. I don't want to waste time on The Awakening. Frontios. To be honest, I think Frontios is a bit underrated, to be honest. I think this is probably my favourite Christopher H. Bidmead story. I just like Frontios. I like the soundtrack. The side cast is interesting. The actual setting of Frontios is good. The Tractators, good design, less good voice, but like, all things considered, I just think it's a decent story. Resurrection of the Daleks. For me, Resurrection of the Daleks is junk food Doctor Who. I know it's not very good. I know that the plan of the Daleks is complicated as all hell. I am aware that this story does meander in places, and it is over-the-top violence. But every time I watch Resurrection of the Daleks, I am transported back into the 80s, watching this on a box television and just being enamored with it. I was not born in the 80s, but that is the power of Resurrection of the Daleks. This story, every time I watch it, I'm in love with it, and then I step back from it, and I'm like, Oh, that wasn't very good.
But I liked it.
Yeah, Planet of Evil? Planet of Fire. I don't know. This is the one where Turlo leaves, and Chameleon dies, and Perry joins the TARDIS team. Look, I've watched this one quite a few times. I don't even know what the story is. I know we filmed this in Lanzarote, and the Master's in it, and that's about it. Oh yeah, the Caves of Androzani. Yeah, it's alright. Okay. I'm a Colin Baker apologist. But I have my limits. There are things that I like in the Twin Dilemma. There's quite a few things that I like in the Twin Dilemma. But they are mostly overshadowed by the things that I don't like about the Twin Dilemma. Namely, the conscious decision to make the Doctor as unlikable as possible. I like Colin Baker. I like the Sixth Doctor. But I really don't like him in this. And the fact that that was like a conscious decision just baffles me to no end. As I said at the start of the video, you can probably notice that Season 22 isn't here, but I actually haven't packaged any of it up yet. So just for this one collection video, I'm just going to quickly fire through these, and hopefully, if the next time I do one of these, there will be a collection set there. Attack of the Cybermen. Attack of the Cybermen is also like junk food Doctor Who for me, but I have more of a nostalgic connection to it because it was one of the first stories I had on DVD, so I just love it. Vengeance on Varos. Good, but not quite what I come here for Doctor Who for, if you catch my drift. Mark of the Rani. I don't know, I think it's underrated, to be honest. I don't know what to tell you. The Two Doctors. I really like it. I don't know what else to say. Time Lash. I hate Time Lash. And Revelation of the Daleks. Probably one of my favourite Sixth Doctor stories, in all honesty. It just is one of my favourites. And we're back. Apologies, I had to go eat dinner. Season 23. The Trial of a Time Lord. Might just be the nostalgia and the Colin Baker apologist in me, but I'm a big fan of Trial of a Time Lord. Just the general meta-analysis of it, I just like in principle, but it's really just the actual story selection that makes me into it. The Mysterious Planet is a really good opener, like genuinely really underrated story from Rob Holmes. Admittedly, it looks cheap as sin, but I think that's par for the course with this show. Mind Warp is admittedly not my cup of tea. That Mind Warp is the weakest story here, to be honest, just because I'm not a big Vengeance on Varos, Philip Martin fan. The camera is going crazy. What is going on with this lighting? Hang on. Just a bit closer there. That'll do. Terror of the Verboids, if I'm being honest, I think is a very underrated story. I love Terror of the Verboids. And The Ultimate Foe could be better, but I'm happy with the version we've got, if that's somewhat a hot take, I don't know. This was unfortunately Colin Baker's last on-screen story, but thankfully Big Finish did give him a regeneration story later down the line, which I have listened to, and is very good. But this is a DVD collection, so I'm not going to include it, but I have seen it, and I would recommend it for anyone who wants to hear what his regeneration story is. Season 24. Everybody's favourite season. Look, I like silly Doctor Who. I like fun Doctor Who. You lot should know that by this point. But Season 24 feels like the step too far. On the one hand, you have Delta and the Bannerman and Dragonfire, which I love, which are fun stories that just grab their premises by the horns and go all the way with it. But on the other hand, you've got Time in the Rani, which is another contender for one of the worst Doctor Who stories ever. I'm sorry, but to me it is. And Paradise Towers, which is a story that I really want to like. I really want to be in the camp of people who really love Paradise Towers and call it underrated. I'm not happy that I hate Paradise Towers, but I hate Paradise Towers. I can't help it. Season 24, honestly, I still kind of like it. I like the more funny McCoy, and I think Seven and Mel are a very underrated TARDIS team. I like when McCoy isn't really being the dark chess master. I'm sorry, that's just me. But season 25, goddamn, is just on another level. Remembrance of the Daleks just blows anything from season 24 out of the water. That's not me saying anything from season 24 is bad, but like, this is how you open a season. It's Remembrance of the Daleks. What more can I say? He's got the Daleks, and they're doing explosions, and the Doctor's being dark, and Ace is being cool, and she's beating the shit out of one with a baseball bat. It's cool. It's fun, and I love that. I just love it. In general, I think season 25 has a good blend of McCoy with the funny Joker side and the dark sort of scheming thing. Season 25 is like the perfect blend of that. I don't really like when the Seventh Doctor is full-on dark chess master. It's just not for me, personally. The Happiness Patrol. This, for me, is a comfort story. Whenever I get sick, or whenever I've got the day off, or whenever I'm just in the mood for something quick, something breezy, or just a good goddamn piece of Doctor Who, the Happiness Patrol is always the one I reach for, because I just love everything about this story. The direction, the atmosphere, the villains, the Candyman, the score alone, like the soundtrack to the Happiness Patrol bumps it up to a 7 at least. I just adore everything about the Happiness Patrol, just everything, no notes. Silver Nemesis is, it's kind of everything wrong with the late J&T era rolled into one story. There are good ideas in there, but then again there's like 20 kajillion ideas in Silver Nemesis, so inevitably one of them was going to be good. I really want to like it. I really want to like it, and some days I do. But the thing that's baffling to me about Silver Nemesis is how much was on the cutting room floor that got removed. But so much of Silver Nemesis could have gone on the cutting room floor, and it didn't. That baffles me. Yo, what's up, diggity dogs? I just made a mess in the other room. The Greatest Show in the Galaxy is a story that has really good moments in it, and a really good location, a great vibe to it. I know you're all sick of me saying vibe at this point, but it's the best word I can think of. There's so much in The Greatest Show in the Galaxy that I love. However, this story feels like it is going at a snail's pace. Something about the pacing in The Greatest Show in the Galaxy is so slow and meandery that it makes the episode feel worse than it actually is. It's not bad, but every time I watch it, it consistently just gets a while to get going, which is weird, especially for a McCoy story. Season 26, we're finally at the end of the classic series. My voice is so tired. Season 26, it's an absolute gem. You know it, I know it. Right here in this season, we've got banger after banger after banger. And also Battlefield is here. Yeah, Battlefield is easily the weakest link here. I really just don't like Battlefield. I want to like it, but it's so messy and disjointed in its ideas. It was very clearly a 3-parter that was told to be a 4-parter, and Jesus, it shows. Ghostlight is a trip, and I love it for that. The Curse of Fenric, no notes, it good, and Survival, I'm always going to love Survival. Me and Survival have like a nostalgic thing. It's kind of like a lot of episodes in the 80s. I just love Survival. Season 26, it's a shame that the classic series came to an end with it, but like, fair enough, it ended on a high. And now it's time to go down to the bottom shelf. I'm trying to get a good angle here. That's actually a great angle. I can just keep it like that. My knees are so tired right now. Kicking things off, we've got Doctor Who the TV movie, or Doctor Who, or Doctor Who the movie. Whatever you want to call it. We still don't know if this is going to get re-released on a hypothetical Wilderness Years collection set, which would be nice, because to have this in a proper Blu-ray would be great. I've not actually watched this, as in this Blu-ray, but I've heard that it's not like a proper upscale type thing, because the BBC couldn't get the license to like the widescreen film prints or something. I don't know. But as it stands, I love the TV movie. I know it's not very good, and I know that it's messy at parts, but it's the TV movie. I can't help it. I just love it, from its tone and style and how completely different it is to anything else in Doctor Who before or after. It just gives it such a distinct identity that I love it. I will say, the one thing with the TV movie, and I think this goes for all TV movie fans, you have to take this into account. The TV movie is a very good episode/continuation of Doctor Who. However, it is objectively a terrible pilot episode for a new series of Doctor Who. And now we enter the revival with Series 1, featuring Christopher Eccleston. It's Series 1. You know it's good, I know it's good. Everyone knows that Series 1 is good. I'm actually going to have to turn this around because I can't remember the episodes. Rose, good. End of the World, good. Unquiet Dead, decent. I really like Aliens of London and World War 3. Dalek is Dalek. The Long Game, it's probably the weak link here, let's be real. Father's Day, phenomenal. The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances, incredible. Boomtown, it's a decent companion piece, character piece, so I'll give it points for that. And Bad Wolf and the Parting of the Ways, unmatched series finale. We are yet to top this as a series finale. No disrespect to series finales after this, but this one's the GOAT. Series 2. Okay, here's another hot take. I like the David Tennant era, but it really doesn't get going for me until about like Series 4. Series 2 and 3, they're not bad, but something about them, like tonally, feels off, and I don't quite know what it is. But every time I watch Series 2 and 3, something just doesn't feel right. I can't really describe it. Let's see, the Christmas Invasion, it's alright. I wish the Doctor was in it more, but fair enough. Russell T Davies knew that he was sort of teasing the new Doctor, so fair enough. New Earth, terrible. Just genuinely terrible way to kick off a series when Tooth and Claw is right there. Tooth and Claw, it's good. School Reunion, also good. Girl in the Fireplace, good. Rise of the Cybermen and the Age of Steel, very good Cyberman 2-parter. The Idiot's Lantern, yeah, it's bad. The Impossible Planet and Satan Pit, really good, really good. Love and Monsters, I am so glad this story is getting reappraised and that people finally sort of get what it was going for. That just makes me happy. Fear Her, Army of Ghosts and Doomsday, good, but not quite what I wanted from like a Daleks versus Cyberman thing, and I'm just not that invested in like everything else that the story is doing. I mean, I'm aware that like with this segment I've just said how many stories here I like, but again, like sometimes there are individually good stories in a series that I will praise to no end, but as a series, as like a whole package together, sometimes it doesn't work. It's sort of a similar thing to what we'll get to with the Whittaker era and sort of Series 8 and all that. Just sometimes there are good stories in a series, lots of good stories in a series, but sometimes as like a total package, it doesn't quite come together. Series 3.
Okay, this is another hot take. I'm not the biggest Series 3 fan. I don't really like how the Doctor is basically brooding this whole series. I have rewatched it, and I really want to say that he's not. He kind of is. Also another hot take. I'm not a big Martha Jones fan, to be honest. I don't want to get into details as to why, because I feel like that deserves a whole other video, but I'm just not completely in love with her, to be honest. And the story selection isn't really that great as well. The Runaway Bride, it's fine. Smith and Jones is admittedly a good series opener. The Shakespeare Code is everything wrong with Gareth Roberts in one story. Gridlock, good premise, not so great execution or use of the macra. Daleks in Manhattan and Evolution of the Daleks, I like it. It's not fantastic, but people act like this is the end-all, be-all, worst Dalek story, and it's really not. The Lazarus Experiment exists. 42 exists. Human Nature and the Family of Blood, admittedly, really good. So's Blink, so's Utopia, so's The Sound of Drums. And then there's The Last of the Time Lords. Last of the Time Lords isn't necessarily dropping the ball, but it is certainly bringing the ball up to a certain height and then letting it go, and it reaching the ground at a considerable speed, if that makes sense. Here we go, Series 4, the creme de la creme, the piece de resistance, the other French word that I can't recall right now. You know Series 4 is good, I know Series 4 is good, we all know Series 4 is good. Voyage of the Damned, I was dead surprised to find out that a lot of people don't like Voyage of the Damned. Why? It's fun. It's a disaster story that takes place on the Titanic. In space. Like, that's fun. Partners in Crime, decent opener. Fires of Pompeii. Oh boy, they were cooking with that one. They just completely out of nowhere. Following up from Partners in Crime, like, that, it came out of nowhere. Planet of the Ood, it's a story I've got a lot of nostalgia for, so I kind of like it anyway. Sontaran Stratagem and Poison Sky. It's alright. It's not great, but it's just not. But it's not terrible either. The Doctor's Daughter. It exists. The Unicorn and the Wasp frustrates me to no end, because I really like it. This is one of my favourite Tennant stories, and a great showcase for Ten and Donna, and it's really funny, and it sucks that it's written by Gareth Roberts. Silence in the Library, Forest of the Dead, it's good. Midnight, Turn Left, Stolen Earth, Journey's End, it's all good. You all know this. And the specials. Bit of a mixed bag, if we're being completely honest. On the one hand, you've got The Next Doctor, Planet of the Dead, and The End of Time Part 1, which aren't great. The Next Doctor is mainly just cool iconography, like the Cybermen in Victorian London, and the idea of someone who's claiming to be the Doctor, but both plots don't really get enough time, so they both don't get enough time. Both just come off as Planet of the Dead, yeah, it sure exists, and The End of Time Part 1 is kind of everything that I don't like about RTD in one episode. However, then there's The Waters of Mars and The End of Time Part 2, which almost completely eclipse the other episodes and make me like the specials. Like, that is the power they have. That is the power of a good story surrounded by other meh stories. Series 5, featuring the debut of Matt Smith, aka My Doctor. I adore the Smith era. Am I biased? Probably, but let's keep going. To be honest, Series 5 is just back-to-back bangers, if I'm being completely honest. 11th Hour, Beast Below, Time of Angels, Flesh and Stone, Vampires of Venice, Amy's Choice, Hungry Earth, Cold Blood, Vincent and the Doctor, Pandora Opens, Big Bang. Like, one of the most consistently good series in my eyes. There's just one little problem. The Lodger. This story sticks out like a sore thumb, not just in general, but for like this Doctor and this series specifically. Like, it is fitting the square peg in the circle hole. It just doesn't fit at all. And of course, there's, Victory of the Daleks, which, everybody loves. We all love Victory of the Daleks, right? It introduced the Dalek paradigm to the world, guys. Everybody knows that. It's one of the most critically acclaimed stories of the Doctor Who universe. The Victory of the Daleks won awards at the Oscars and the Brits and all that. Everyone knows Victory of the Daleks sold parrot $1 million at the box office. You don't need me to talk about that. Alright, if Series 5 got me into Doctor Who, it was Series 6 that definitely made me a fan. This is officially when I joined the good ship TARDIS. Series 5, I was kind of on the precipice of the door, I was kind of becoming a fan. Series 6, I'm on board. This is when Doctor Who became event television for me. And to be honest, if I'm being completely transparent, Series 6 is kind of one of the best series, like story-wise. I don't think it comes together as a whole, and there is obviously the ending, but like Series 6, I think is kind of slept on. Like, there are some genuinely great stories here. A Christmas Carol is forever and always my favourite Christmas special, just for personal reasons and nostalgia. The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon is a great series opener. The Doctor's Wife is another favourite story of all time. I've got nostalgia for the Rebel Flesh and the Almost People, so that's just a personal choice. I love A Good Man Goes to War. Night Terrors is a very underrated story. Not enough people talk about Night Terrors. The Girl Who Waited and The God Complex are absolutely some of the best stories from this era. There are weak links here, more so than Series 5. The Curse of the Black Spot is admittedly a bit naff. Let's Kill Hitler is also a bit naff. And then there is, unfortunately, the 1-2 punch of Closing Time and The Wedding River Song. The Wedding River Song isn't even bad. It's just really disappointing and so badly needed to be a two-parter. Like, cut out any of the stories that I just mentioned as being naff and just make The Wedding of River Song a two-parter, because that story is dying to be 2 parts long. Series 7 is another series that I've got a lot of nostalgia for. I remember in 2012 going to the Doctor Who experience in Cardiff with my family, and the trailer for Series 7A being on in the background on a loop, and it just being burned into my retina. I think Series 7 is the weakest of the Smith series, but like, it's really not bad. People say that this is like the weakest, like one of the worst series of the revival. It's not great, but like, there are still some really good stories in here, to be honest. The Doctor, the Widow and the Wardrobe is a pretty naff story that is entirely saved by its last 3 minutes. Like, those last 3 minutes are so good, they convince me the story is good. Asylum of the Daleks, I was gonna give it a 6 or a 7 out of 10, but then I remembered that the Dalek Paradigm are in it, so, I'll bump it up to like a 9.9. Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, it's fun. Fuck you. I'm entitled to like one fun story, and Dinosaurs on a Spaceship is fun. A Town Called Mercy, really, really good. I feel like that one's still underrated to a lot of people. The Power of Three, I've not seen anything from Torchwood, so I'm going to go ahead and say that The Power of Three is probably Chris Chibnall's best story before he became showrunner. The Power of Three is a great time, honestly. The Angels Take Manhattan, probably the weakest Weeping Angel story, but like, again, still not bad. The Snowmen and the Bells of St. John, I think, are two very underrated stories, to be honest. I really like them. The Rings of Akaten is admittedly not great. It's got a good speech in it, but it's very much the kind of sci-fi that you don't want to watch when your family's in the room, if you catch my drift. Cold War call me crazy, folks, it might be my favourite Ice Warrior story. I've got an idea for an Ice Warrior video in the pipeline somewhere, and maybe one of those days I'll get round to it, but my true thoughts on Cold War are you're gonna have to wait for that. Hyde, it's fine. Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS, I've come around on a lot. I wouldn't quite call it great, but I'm definitely not as harsh towards it as I was. The Crimson Horror, I think it's a very underrated story. Like, I love the vibe and tone that it goes for, and the fact that it is Dr. Light for most of it. And I like the Paternoster gang, so I'm on board for it. I do have to dock points, because it is a story which features my childhood doctor non-consensually kissing a lesbian. But, you know, like with Talons of Weng Chiang, if we kind of push that to the side a little bit, I love everything else in the Crimson Horror. Nightmare in Silver? What happened here? How did we get Neil Gaiman writing a Cyberman story, and it turned out like that? And the name of the Doctor... it's alright. It kind of just exists to set up the 50th anniversary special, and it really doesn't have a lot to do on its own. But I don't know, I still kind of like it. I like getting to explore Trenzalore for a bit, and again, I like the Paternoster gang, so I'm kind of on board for it. The Day of the Doctor. Yeah, it's alright. I think we're yet to top this as an anniversary special. This, to me, this was, like, the event of my childhood. This was just the greatest piece of television I'd ever watched. And if I'm being honest, it might still be. Everything about The Day of the Doctor, I just love. From its music, from its story, all the actors involved, every single aspect of it, I love. You probably could have fitted a Paradigm Dalek in there somewhere. And The Time of the Doctor. The story that was... oh, this one broke me as a child. This one broke me. 11 was my childhood Doctor, and I wasn't prepared to see him go. Oh my god. Time of the Doctor is another one of those stories that's maybe one of my favourite stories of all time. I know it's messy. I know it's a bit convoluted. I know the opening 6 minutes are terrible, but everything else I adore in The Time of the Doctor. Just the story, the premise, the pacing, the characters, the themes. I love so much of The Time of the Doctor. And I love the fact that for the Regeneration special, Childhood William was devastated, but then my childhood Doctor turned towards me, aka the camera, and said, "Don't worry, I'm going to be fine." And then he becomes the funny Scottish man. Like, more Regeneration stories, no disrespect to the tragic, emotional ones, need to keep in mind that children watch it as well. And I just love the Doctor reassuring the audience, I'm going to be okay. The next person is still going to be me. Like, I adore that kind of stuff from Doctor Who. It's why I adore Moffat so much. But you could have fit the Paradigm Daleks in here. It's the last 11th Doctor story, and those Daleks are so specific to his era. And you could have written them out in this. You could have had the Doctor do the big explodey regeneration energy thing, and then the Dalek Paradigm are all wiped out, and then you're back to the bronze one. You could have fit them in there. They did the photo shoot for the Radio Times cover. You're telling me that we couldn't wheel out the props for the actual story, but we did for the Radio Times cover? Honestly, Time of the Doctor, you were a 10 out of 10, but because you don't have Paradigm Daleks in you, I am going to have to knock you down to a 9.5. Oh god, I have been kneeling on the floor for so long. Oh, my knees. Oh, I'm going to have to sit in my chair. I'm going to have to sit in my chair now. Oh god. I apologise if this is creaky for the rest of the video, but oh my god, my feet have gone dead. Ugh. Series 8, featuring the debut of Peter Capaldi. Now, if you were like me, and you jumped into Doctor Who during the Moffat era, you know about the weird, bizarro effect that's been going on with this era. There was a time when Stephen Moffat the 12th Doctor, Clara Oswald, Series 8 and Series 9 were hailed as like one of the worst eras of the show. There was a time where Clara was considered the worst companion. This was one of the worst runs of the show. Stephen Moffat didn't know what he was doing, and all of that. And then, like, the second Capaldi leaves, everyone goes back and goes, "Oh, this was one of the really good eras. This was really great." And that is surreal to me, because I remember all of the video essays claiming that the show was dead during this period, and then all of a sudden everyone does a fucking 360 whiplash turnaround and is like, "Oh no, this was good. This was always good." You what? Deep Breath is not a great post-regeneration story. It's kind of messy in a few places, and I will admit, as a Paternoster Gang fan, they do not fit in this story at all. Into the Dalek, pretty good. I'd probably need to give it a rewatch to solidify my opinion more. Robot of Sherwood, call me crazy, call me stupid, it's fun and I like it. Listen, creepy and atmospheric, I love it. Time Heist, supremely underrated story. The Caretaker, it's shit. Kill the Moon, haven't rewatched that one in a while, so I'm not well educated to talk about the story's themes. So I'm not going to touch that subject with a 50-foot fucking pole. Mummy on the Orient Express, phenomenal. Flatline, phenomenal. In the Forest of the Night, same as Kill the Moon, not going to touch that subject with a 50-foot fucking pole. And Dark Water and Death in Heaven. I really like part 1, but Death in Heaven does the same thing as Last of the Time Lords, where it's not dropping the ball per se, but it is certainly getting the ball and dropping it from a considerable distance and not quite bouncing back, if you catch my drift. Series 9. It might be one of my favourite series of the revival. I know that might sound crazy to some of you people, but this is everything I want from revival Doctor Who. Every story's a two-parter, with a great Doctor, great companion, great Doctor-companion dynamic, great emotional core running through the whole thing, and a great selection of stories. Having said that, Last Christmas is a bit and The Magician's Apprentice is a bit naff. I like The Witch's Familiar, I just don't like The Magician's Apprentice. The Magician's Apprentice is like pure setup, but like everything in The Witch's Familiar I adore. But it does feature a lot of Dalek designs, and I can't help but feel like the Dalek paradigm should be there. Under the Lake, Before the Flood, brilliant, fantastic two-parter. The Girl Who Died, very underrated, if I'm being honest. Upon rewatch, that one has really gone up in my opinion. The Woman Who Lived is so close to being a character piece that I love, but then they force in the fire-breathing lion dragon, and it just sucks me out. The Zygon Invasion and the Zygon Inversion, I would have given it an 8 alone on Capaldi's acting in this story, but it's everything else that bumps it up for me. Sleep No More. I forgot this was in this series. Sleep No More, bless them for trying. It's a nice gimmick, but like, this is a Series 8 story in more ways than one, and it just doesn't fit here. I'll appreciate it as an experiment, but it just doesn't work. Face of the Raven, really good, and then Heaven Sent and Hellbent. In my opinion, a misunderstood masterpiece. Everyone knows Heaven Sent is good. I am firmly in the camp of defending Hellbent until the day I die. I could dedicate a whole video to Hellbent. I probably will later down the line, but I adore Hellbent so much. And then The Husbands of River Song is like a top tier Christmas special for me. It's absolutely one of the best, one of the most emotional, and one of the funniest. More Christmas specials should try and be funny, and The Husbands of River Song is still really funny. And it introduces Nardole. That can't be understated. While Series 9 might be my personal favourite of the Capaldi era,
I can't deny how good Series 10 is. Series 10 and Series 9 are tied as like my favourite from the Moffat era. But even saying that, I like Series 5, Series 6, 9 and 10. Those are my favourite from the Moffat era. But like Series 10 is still so damn good. I love Capaldi in this. I love Nardole. I love Bill. I love Bill so much. He's one of the best new companions we've had in ages. Why do they make these so small on the box? I can barely read that. The Return of Dr. Mysterio, it's alright. The pilot, good opener. Smile, I think it's alright. Thin Ice, genuinely showrunner material. Honestly. Knock Knock, I think it's quite underrated. Oxygen is so damn good. I love Oxygen. Extremis, The Pyramid at the End of the World, The Lie of the Land, the Monk trilogy in the middle really does hurt Series 10. But if you ignore that, it's still really good. Empress of Mars is a really good Ice Warrior story. If I'm being honest, I prefer the Revival era Ice Warriors to the classic Who Ice Warriors. Call that a hot take. The Eaters of Light, I was initially a bit numb to it, but the novelization weirdly brought me around on it. I really love the Eaters of Light now. Oh yeah, and what's this? World Enough and Time and the Doctor Falls. Yeah, it's alright. Yeah, no, it's one of the best Cybermen stories, a great showcase for Missy, and John Simmers the Master, and just a great power trip that shows the audience who the Doctor is. I adore everything about this two-parter. I'm very glad that The Doctor Falls wasn't the regeneration story, though. That's my hot take. I love The Doctor Falls, but I'm very glad that Twice Upon a Time exists. Twice Upon a Time. Again, it might be one of my favourite stories. Call me crazy, but I love everything in this story. I'm probably just going to link to the Davis commentary because he puts it a lot better than I could. I adore so much about Twice Upon a Time. From its music, to its direction, to its theme, to just everything about it. I love Twice Upon a Time so much, and I don't think I'll ever stop. Anyway, now that we've got, that controversial era of the show out of the way, let's talk about the next controversial era, Series 11. Series 11 is a weird one for me, because individually, I love the stories in this series. To be honest, there's only two that I consider flat out bad, and that's Arachnids in the UK and the Battle of Ranskorav Kolos, which, through Chris Chibnall's own admission, is a first draft, I believe, because he was busy doing the script editing for the other stories, which, fair enough. But everything else in this series, I'm going off memory because for some reason they don't put them on the back of these ones. The Woman Who Fell to Earth, Ghost Monument, Rosa, Saranga Conundrum, Demons of the Punjab especially. Kablam, for 90% of its runtime. What's after Kablam? Is it It Takes You Away and then The Witchfinders? Yeah, that racks up. Those stories are all 6 out of 10 or above in my eyes. The Woman Who Fell to Earth is a really good post-regeneration story, better than most. Ghost Monument, I think, is pretty good. Rosa is really good. I've come around on the Saranga Conundrum. Demons of the Punjab is easily the series highlight. Kablam, I love for 90% of its runtime. It Takes You Away is great, and The Witchfinders, I think, is dead underrated. However, like with Series 2, when it all comes together as this complete package, it kind of loses me a bit. I think it's because so much of the series is in that 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 zone that a lot of it feels
samey. So as a whole series, it just feels a bit mid. I don't hate Series 11. I'm not one of those people who claims that this was the end of Doctor Who. Like, there's far worse out there. But, like, Series 11, it's fine. I think it could have been a lot better, and I would have liked to see it be a lot better, but just, again, individual stories, really, really good. I think it's just, on the whole, it kind of loses a bit of that Doctor Who identity. Something about its visuals feels a bit... It loses a bit of the colour, especially with Series 12 and 13 onwards. It just feels a bit drab, like, from a visuals point of view. But, like, everything else, like, I got no complaints with Series 11. It's decent. It's 6 out of 10 series on the whole. Series 12 is kind of the same thing, where, like, as a series, it feels a bit off, like, as a whole package. But, like, individually, there are great stories in here. Resolution is probably one of my favourite Dalek stories, unironically, and just a great 13th Doctor episode as a whole. Spyfall Part 1, really, really good. Spyfall Part 2, less so. Orphan 55. Look, is it bad? Yes, I'm not denying that. Orphan 55 is a bad episode of Doctor Who. But if you're seriously sat there saying that it's the worst episode of Doctor Who ever made, again, I would really like to know what episodes you give a 3 pass. Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, very underrated story in my opinion. I really love Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror. Fugitives of the Judoon, also really good. Praxius, also really good. Can You Hear Me? Also really good. Haunting of Villa Diodati, fan favourite for a reason. Ascension of the Cybermen, really boring, to be honest. It's kind of The Magician's Apprentice all over again, where it just feels like a story that exists to set things up, except instead of it being followed up with a story that it was made for, it's followed by something completely different. And of course, The Timeless Children. Now, I know what you're thinking. What does Mr. Waxley think of the Timeless Child twist? I like it. I like the Timeless Child thing, I'm sorry. I like lore dump episodes, I can't help it. And I find the Timeless Child as a concept interesting. I can't help it. It's a good idea box. I just like it. I'm in that weird group of people that like the Timeless Children and like the Timeless Child thing as a whole. I don't know what to tell you, I just do. Series 12, I think, on the whole, is better than Series 11, just because it has more of a visual identity. It feels more confident in being Doctor Who. Series 11 felt like a soft reboot, but it kind of felt like it wasn't Doctor Who visually sometimes, whereas this is definitely more distinct, more overt with being Doctor Who, and I appreciate it for that. Revolution of the Daleks, because for some reason this story wasn't included on either box set. I wouldn't mind so much, except it's Revolution of the Daleks. People say that Eve is the weakest of the Chibnall Dalek trilogy. Nah, mate, it's this. For me, at least. This is the weak one. Revolution of the Daleks is just so messy. It's kind of... I can't really think of any other word for it. It's just messy. It doesn't quite know what idea to stick with. And it feels dead padded. And I've got a crackpot fan theory for that. So, around the time that Revolution of the Daleks was broadcast, was it 2021, New Year's Day? So this is after 2020, after the whole pandemic. So this episode was done, but then I think lockdown was either announced or extended or whatever. So it feels like during the editing stage, they decided, well, this might be the last Doctor Who episode for a while, so let's cram as much as we can into it. So they took all of those pointless deleted scenes and stuck them back in. Because of that, Revolution of the Daleks is weirdly long and has a lot of nothing in it. And it feels like that was to make up for the fact that they didn't know when they'd be making Doctor Who again. That's my crazy fan theory. It might be completely incorrect, but it would explain why Revolution of the Daleks is so boring at points. Series 13, Flux. It might be one of my favourite series of the revival again. I love when Doctor Who just gets weird, and I love how not even the 2020 pandemic could stop the Flux. I love Jodie this season, I love Mandip this season, I love Dan. Who doesn't love Dan? And on average, on the whole, I love 95% of this series. I think the Halloween Apocalypse is a great opener. I think War of the Sontarans is great. Once Upon Time is a great trippy episode. Village of the Angels is a great story. And dare I say it, I love the Vanquishers. I love the Vanquishers so much. However, I hate Chapter 5. Chapter 5, Survivors of the Flux, is the worst episode of the Chibnall era, in my eyes. Just a complete encapsulation of everything wrong with his era in one story. I remember when it was announced that Flux was going to be 6 episodes, and everyone was like, oh, well, that might help with Chris Chibnall, so there won't be as much room for padding. But God bless Chris Chibnall, he managed to fit that all into one single story. But on the whole, I adore Flux. I know it's messy. I know it's a bit bad in places. But it's literally everything that I love about Doctor Who in one package. And I can't help but love it. And finally, we have the specials. Don't you just love how 3 of the 60th anniversary specials were able to fit onto one single case, but these 3 weren't? Doctor Who packaging is funny sometimes. Eve of the Daleks and Legend of the Sea Devils. This isn't like a complete juxtaposition of stories. I don't know what to tell you. Eve of the Daleks might be one of my favourite stories from the 13th Doctor's era, and one of my favourite Dalek stories in recent years, if I'm being honest. And dare I say it, it is funny. It's funny to me. And then there's Legend of the Sea Devils. Is that an airplane? Can you be quiet, please? I'm trying to film my funny Doctor Who video. Legend of the Sea Devils. Look, I like fun Doctor Who. I like silly Doctor Who, but there's a difference between fun and silly and messy. And Legend of the Sea Devils is messy. There is so much wrong with Legend of the Sea Devils, it's actually kind of impressive. It's almost saved, like the Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe, with those last few minutes by addressing the 13th Doctor and Yaz thing. But it's just not enough. It's not enough to save Legend of the Sea Devils. I can't call it good. I can't call it good, I'm sorry. And of course, the power of the Doctor. This might be my favourite story of the 13th Doctor's era. And I know it sounds like a backhanded compliment that the best episode of this era was the last one, but like, that's just a testament to how good it is. I love the power of the Doctor so much, because again, it's everything that I love about Doctor Who in one story. Yes, it's fan wanky. Yes, it's full of fan service. Yes, it's a bit overly long, but like, I still love it. I like how involved the companions are in this. I like the 13th Doctor as a whole in this story. I adore Sacha Dhawan as the Master. I didn't mention him before, and that was criminal. I love him, especially in this. I love the power of the Doctor so much. This episode will always hold a special place in my heart. I love it so much. A great note to end on. And most recently, the 60th anniversary specials, featuring the return of David Tennant and Catherine Tate, as well as featuring Neil Patrick Harris and Yasmin Finney. which, fun fact everyone, I went to secondary school with her. I was in the same maths class and the same drama set as her. When she was announced as being in the cast, I had to do a goddamn double take. But she could... What? It was just great to see her, honestly. God knows if she'll ever reach out to me. I'd like to be in an episode of Doctor Who, please. Anyway, the specials. I don't know how I feel about them yet. I have only watched all 3 of them once, and I do that for a lot of revival Doctor Who. I watch them once, I let them simmer for a bit, and then I go back to them. So I'm not really gonna give my concrete thoughts on these. Loose thoughts. I remember quite liking the Star Beast. I remember loving Wild Blue Yonder. And the Giggle is the story that I'm waiting for, where I'm really waiting for the hype of these to calm down for a bit and for a revisit. I don't know how I feel about the Giggle yet, and I'm not going to say if I loved it or hated it. I just don't know. I legitimately don't know what to make of it, so I'm going to let it sit for a bit, and one of these days I'm going to go back to it. But for now, I will say on the whole, I do like the 60th anniversary special. I don't think they've topped the Day of the Doctor for me, but for what they are, I had a good time. And over here in this tiny little corner here, we've got the miscellaneous ones that obviously I can't fit anywhere else on the shelf, and it's just nice to have a sort of miscellaneous bit down here. So we've got An Adventure in Space and Time, the 2013 version of it, because I think they edited it for the 60th anniversary where they put Shooty in it instead of Matt Smith. That was a good detail, I like that. But I love An Adventure in Space and Time. It's a good docudrama. It kind of skips over a few details that I would have liked them to go into detail with. But as a whole, it's still damn good. David Bradley pulls out a great performance. The soundtrack to An Adventure in Space and Time is like one of the most underrated things of this whole production. I love it so much. The Dalek Collection, which is obviously Doctor Who and the Daleks, and Daleks Invasion Earth... Invasion of... What? Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD. I am planning on upgrading to the Steelbook, because that obviously comes with a Blu-ray as well as a 4K version, and because it would fit better on the shelf as opposed to the giant, expensive box sets. But for now, I'm just keeping them in standard definition. They're fun. Like, I feel like people get rung up on like, are the Doctor Who movies canon? And it's like, I don't really care, to be honest. I'm just here to watch the Daleks on the big screen, and in that respect, these 2 movies pass with flying colours. More Than 30 Years in the TARDIS. This was a documentary made around the 30th anniversary of the show, so Doctor Who was off the air. It's a great time. It's weird looking back on it as, like, from the perspective of someone who knows that Doctor Who would be returning. Again, the soundtrack in this is great, and just the actual narrative that they create for it is also really great. But More Than 30 Years in the TARDIS comes in a box set with Sharda. Where's that? I don't know. I found this on its own in a charity shop, and frankly, I've already got enough versions of Sharda, so I'll just stick to having this on its own. Scream of the Shalka. This was made around the 40th anniversary, I believe, during the Wilderness years, and before the revival was effectively announced. I think part 1 was actually transmitted like a few days before it was announced Doctor Who was returning. This was meant to be sort of like a soft reboot, and it's weird to look at as like this what if scenario. Like, this is what Doctor Who in the 21st century could have been like. I do think it's pretty underrated as well. Like, the animation's a bit stiff, but you have to keep in mind this was meant to be broadcast over broadband on like 2003 internet in like a picture that was the size of a postage stamp. So the fact that it's the way that it is honestly kind of impressive. As well as that, if I've got my facts right, this story was part 1 of this story was broadcast on my first birthday. So that's neat. And finally, a bit of a weird note to end on for this DVD collection. We have The Infinite Quest. I think this was the final animation done by Cosgrove Hall. And it's probably their best one. And I'm not just saying that because it's in colour. There's a lot more complicated movements and settings and whatnot. It's a fun little romp around the universe to find the several things so we can get access to the big thing and stop What's-His-Face from getting ultimate power. It's a bit kiddie, like more than usual because it was meant to be on Totally Doctor Who, but like as it stands, it's still fun. I could probably dedicate a whole video to the Infinite Quest, but for what it is, it's fine. And yeah, thus completes my long DVD collection video. My first DVD collection video. Oh, I'm so tired.